Thumbs up. Good. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Selectmen regular meeting of Wednesday, June 12th. Item 1 on the agenda is the first Selectmen's report. I'd like to start the meeting on a point of personal privilege this evening. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I'm pleased to recognize the service of two departing members of the Board of Selectmen, Dr. David Lober and Ms. Terry Schatz. I have certificates that I would like to read. They're both the same, so I'll just read one. Official citation from the Office of the First Selectman to Terry Schatz and Dr. David Lober in recognition of her and his service as a member of the Woodbridge Board of Selectmen from 2017 to 2019, given this 12th day of June, 2019, and it's signed. And I would respectfully request if you guys could just come up and do a photo with your certificates. And maybe I'll give you a hug.
Thank you. Oh, this is nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you guys just stand together, we'll take this.
Thank you. Take care.
We'll come to public
Thank you.
comment.
Yep. Whoops. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you don't get to have to do these creepy photos anymore. Sorry, Sheila. Okay, thank you, everyone. And I think we need a round of applause. Thank you. It's not easy. Okay. Item 2 on the agenda. Oh, no, I should go through my report now, sorry. I'd like to update you on the subject of the former country club property, as I described in our meeting on June 4th when we selected developer Brian St. Pierre. The timeline going forward will be, during the months of June and July, the contract will be negotiated. This step has begun, and a meeting with Brian and his team is scheduled for later this week. I will keep the board updated on this. Following negotiation, the Board of Selectmen will meet, probably in August, to consider setting a date for the special town meeting public hearing. There will be presentations to boards, commissions, and community groups, marketing and public information efforts by the developer, hopefully beginning in August and continuing into early September. We will look to schedule the special town meeting public hearing in September and a referendum for September or October. Again, I will continue to keep everyone up to date on progress, and I would also like to stress how important it is that our process culminates with the opportunity for the residents and property owners of Woodbridge to directly decide on this issue with their vote at a referendum. I thank everyone for your continued attention to this matter. Next, as you may know, Beecher Road School experienced a lockdown incident last week on June 5th. I'm conducting a thorough review of the incident, and I have asked Andy Esposito to assist in this regard. Due to his knowledge of the security systems in the town-owned building, based on his years of work on the Beecher building renovation project, Andy is the ideal person to spearhead this effort to gather information, help us evaluate strengths and any weaknesses, and continuously improve our response to emergency situations. I will ask for a report from Andy by June 25th, and we will review the results to determine any next steps that may be necessary, including any further security assessment, evaluation, or additional training. We take this responsibility very seriously, and I expect to have further information to share with the selectmen at a future date. Lastly is a brief recap of meetings and events I took part in over the past month. On May 10th, my staff members and I visited a team of staff at Newtown Town Hall to get a first-hand look at that community's Fairfield Hills Town campus. At this location, the town of Newtown repurposed former psychiatric hospital buildings that were abandoned, and they are in the process of redeveloping their town campus. On May 14th, I attended an EDC-sponsored happy hour gathering at Saloon. May 15th, I took part in a grand reopening ceremony at the Willows on Amity Road. Also on May 15th, I attended a follow-up meeting with Eversource and Woodbridge residents impacted by the utility company's recent maintenance around the overhead power lines that run through our town. May 17th, I attended the DARE graduation ceremony at Beecher Road School. Kudos and thanks to Officer Vinnie Lynch, who does such a nice job with this event every year. Also, on May 17th, I had the opportunity to present a citation on behalf of the Selectmen to honor Bob Conniff's many years of service to our town. It was my honor and somber duty to visit with Bob just before his passing to present him with a citation, and I will treasure this along with my many other memories of Bob. My condolences go out to his family and friends. There will be a service on June 15th, which I plan to attend. On May 27th, we conducted our annual Memorial Day ceremony. Thanks again to Barry Josephs for his work to make this very moving event happen every year. On June 11th, I attended another economic development event at the Palestinian Museum on Litchfield Turnpike. Betsy will have more details to share on that. And earlier today, I took part in the Beecher graduation ceremony. So that brings us up to date, and now we will hear from Superintendent Bob Gilbert. Red light.
First of all, I just want to say congratulations and thank you also to Dave and to Terry. Thank you for your service and congratulations. So as First Selectman mentioned, we had our 6th grade graduation this afternoon. Our fabulous 6th grade class was recognized and was moved forward to middle school. It was a great event, as it always is, and we really appreciate Amity's hosting, allowing us to use their facility for that. Our 6th graders are now poised and ready for middle school, and we will miss them greatly. Thank you, Beth, for speaking this afternoon. And of course, that leads to tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day of school at Beecher Road School, and so there's a bit of excitement in the air, as you can imagine. We are closing the school year with an enrollment of 843 students, which is pretty close to what we started with at 846. We've been hovering here and there, so it's been very steady all year long. And it's too early to tell as to how next year will play out in terms of enrollment coming in. So we will keep you posted on that, and we'll keep you informed and up to date. Our current fiscal year 2019 budget, just an update, and I know that a lot of this was really addressed this past Monday, but as you know, from my monthly reports, our deficit has been holding fairly steady, although from the last report, and the last official report we have that's Board of Ed approved is through the end of April, and our deficit moved down from 302K to 289K overall. We have our next finance meeting this coming Monday, and as we release encumbrances along the way, as we typically do at this time of the year, we're expecting this overall deficit number to go down. And if I was to project it, I would say around to the 260 range at this particular meeting, and then we still have another month to go in terms of the final. But that's just an estimate at this point. So, and I think we know we've covered the fact that this deficit includes all of the unexpected facility issues and costs that took place, as well as the reduction of the $50,000 in our budget last May, and also the unanticipated special education expenses that we incurred this year. In terms of this past Monday's special meeting, I would like to thank all of you for your support again this year in terms of ensuring that we were able to complete the year with the special appropriation. Our ad hoc building committee, just again to bring you updated along the way. As you know, phase 1 installation of the work that was approved, installation was done over April vacation, which included the A-wing unit ventilators, S-wing fan coil units, and modifications to ERV units. As you know, we've experienced an interesting spring moving into summer. It's been pretty mild for the most part, so we are running trend data and collecting that, but we have not yet been able to complete the analysis of that and be poised ready to analyze and figure out and then go ahead and start phase 2 work. So we're hoping that is going to take place soon. There's also an analysis of the chiller temperatures that are part of this process as well. Our ad hoc committee is scheduled to have a meeting tomorrow morning at 8:45 to discuss a variety of things, including this information, including our Dectron unit in terms of how we're moving forward to ensure that is everything it should be. We will obviously talk about the lockdown follow-up as well with Andy there. And so that meeting will be taking place tomorrow morning. In terms of the lockdown, I just wanted to add on to what Beth had mentioned, and I appreciate her support. I appreciate the process that she has put in place. We have been working very closely with our vendors since that false alarm took place. And in working with them, we have determined, and they have determined, that the false alarm did originate within our PA speaker system. Much more than that, I can't tell you, but we at least know that much, and that's helpful to know. And so that'll be shared with Andy, and we're working with them to further diagnose. They'll be in on the building Friday, Monday, and we will continue to work towards ensuring we know exactly what the cause was and how we move past that. And I want to thank the police department for their responsiveness and their partnership during that alarm this past week. Next year's school budget and staffing, I wanted to just bring you up to date in terms of, first of all, being grateful again to the residents of Woodbridge and your support as well, improving our 3.61 increase. And, as we continue to experience an increase in our overall number of students, percentage of students with IEPs, meaning special education plans, we continue to have a trend of shifting the staff that we have from more general kinds of work in general areas towards special education assignments, which is something we have to do because the special education plans are a mandated legal document. So I wanted to share that with you because I'm sharing that with parents along the way as we move into the summer, as we plan for next year. What that means is some of our teacher assistants who support general kinds of things in grade levels, even in kindergarten, we're going to have to scale back some of the time that they're in those rooms in order to make those staff members available for special education mandated needs. And again, that's not a one-year thing. That's been a trend that's been going on for the last few years. And just wanted to bring you up to date on that as well. Summer programs. We have some terrific summer programs ready to meet the needs of students and families. And extended day and summer enrichment are still open for signups, and all programs start on June 24th. And my last item is just to mention that the bridge, which is our annual communication to the entire town, is in process, and we anticipate that it will be delivered to all Woodbridge households sometime in early to mid-July. So be looking out for that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I just got a notification, Nancy and Pua, that you guys can't hear. No, someone in the audience.
The microphones are picking up the sound. You couldn't hear your proclamation. I mean, I can't hear good anyways, but when your system was
Are other people hearing us?
loud, it does not sound like Mr. Gilbert is speaking into the microphone.
Oh, I'm right next to it, but I'm not, yeah.
They're on now.
Well, now it's on. It's probably a little over. Yeah, that's a little too much, probably. You're gonna get some.
Would you like me to read my selectmen's report over again? Should I take a vote? Okay, they want me to read my report again. Okay. Sheesh. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? Yes, I could. Anyone have any questions for Bob?
Oh, is there a protocol to notify town hall if there's a lockdown at the school? Or does that happen at some point?
Yes.
So,
Town hall
so,
was notified.
and so I when I'm on live, and on television.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, you can certainly hear me. This is a little overjuiced, I think, at this point, but it's better than it was. I'm careful to say how much information here because security is secure information.
Yeah, I'm not asking
but
for
what I can say is
information, just do you notify that there's a lockdown?
when everything is working the way it should be working, there is an immediate notification to the police department.
Police department.
Police department. Yes.
And then does it,
We're
then what
looking at some of
then what
the-
happens? The only reason I'm asking is
Okay.
because I think as part of that, the Board of Selectmen should be notified, because I get all kinds of calls, as others probably did, what's
I
going
don't know
on.
if that is in the protocol, but it's certain, when we
'Cause
look
I
at the
said,
protocol,
what
we could
lockdown at
certainly
Beecher
add
Road
that,
School?
because I'll bring that up tomorrow morning.
Just nice
There
if
were
people
there were
call.
some issues with other things that we have to look at, which I really can't talk about, because I
Yeah.
think it's security
Just for
related,
the
but
future.
we'll talk about that all that in the morning, and I'll be happy to bring that up tomorrow morning to be looked at. There was a number of problems, so we have to drill down and figure out what happened. Okay, thank you. Anybody else for Bob?
So the police are notified, but what about the other first responders? What about the fire department?
That's not part of my jurisdiction in terms of, our protocol is police get
Police
notified
department,
first, and
okay.
then I believe whatever is developed
We
kind of
have to
spins
look
off
at the
from there.
protocol, because my understanding was there was some issues regarding dispatch.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Item 3, liaison reports. Terry?
I did not go into any meetings this month.
Okay. You had a busy month with other things. Okay, thank you.
There was a recent EDC meeting, and the EDC continues to review the CERC report with the intent of providing a SWOT analysis and a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as to what the content, just a summary of the content of the report, but also what they feel it may be appropriate action as a result of reviewing the report. We also had discussion as relates to properties and vacancies and buildings within the town that could be potential areas of either development or bringing new businesses in. Betsy's very much engaged in that activity. She's been reaching out to different entities, Rex, and as well as others, to see exactly for assistance and making sure that it is known that these properties are available. And there was also an event that I'm sure you'll be going over in more detail. So that was it. The rec meeting is coming up in a couple weeks. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting for the recreation.
Thank you. That
You're
it?
welcome. Yes.
Okay. Who wants to go first, David?
All right. So into Human Services Commission, there's some items in programming. Tennis courts are going to be relined for pickleball. The lunch program is still looking for a chef.
Can I ask you a question? They do pickleball. I thought they did that in the gym. They do it
They
at the
do it in the
tennis
gym.
courts?
Apparently, they want to do it outdoors as well.
Okay.
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 The
Is that
centers,
gonna, well, I
Go
guess
ahead.
I shouldn't ask, but I'll find out.
That's all I know about it.
Is that gonna create a conflict in terms of use of tennis versus, well, we'll figure that out, okay. That's my problem. Thank you.
the center is looking for a chef for the lunch program. They're also looking at other meal options. The most promising one is Bridgeport Senior Services, which can supply kosher meals at $5.25 each, including delivery. The cost now to town is $11 to have them prepared on site. The meals were sampled by people in the Human Services Commission. They said they were delicious. Okay. Transportation, the times and the scope of services is being expanded to include shopping, lunch, bunch, restaurant attendance, to address the need and also to help support a grant application, grants becoming more competitive. They may attempt to combine services with Bethany as well. Living Treasure Awards fundraisers being planned for October 2nd. The ramp project is finally progressing with completion hopefully by the end of June. At some point, construction will require breaking through the lounge wall for a doorway. The programs will then be moved to the cafeteria. The staff is exploring fundraising options for center renovation and is considering starting a 501c3 or other entity to accept donations, which would be tax deductible. They hope they might be assisted by the town attorney in this matter. They've looked at carpet tiles to replace the worn and stained carpeting in the lounge. They found the lowest price of $4,845. The painting will cost $12,000 and is being requested from the budget surplus. I think we're voting on that today. They had a shelter simulation exercise in May, and some new issues were identified and addressed, including the purchases of towels for people who wish to shower, and 2 sets of sweat clothes for emergencies. There's CPR training for town employees to be held in June. The Juvenile Review Board it has a conference and regionalization being planned. The Library Commission has work begun on its HVAC, and that is without disruption to the present system. The budget spending is at 82% of the predicted level and should finish at about 91% for the year, so they'll be under budget. They have a website designer who's been found who will offer the website design for half the cost of the previous developer with no monthly fee. Sandy Stein suggested the developer get input from the staff, check background, and ask for a detailed contract. The Friends book sale was well attended. Proceeds were better than last year. All unsold books were donated to nonprofits and charitable entities. We would like to thank the 5 tireless Amity High School interns who helped make this event so successful. And Coupop did not meet. And that's all there is.
Thank you.
You bet.
Joe?
Oh, I don't have any.
Okay. Oh. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Few, it's been a few.
thank you. Okay, item 4 on the agenda is the IT update. Sean DeRosa, Amity IT Director. Come on down. Yep.
So before we begin, I just want to give a little background for our IT. So back in 2017, realizing that our town hall servers were about 5 years old at that point, we began investigating a possible replacement of those servers. We did receive a quote from our current vendor, but we were concerned that at that time the town was sort of operating as 3 different entities, 3 different units, fire, police, and town. So we looked into developing a more cohesive town-wide plan for IT, and so realizing we don't have the expertise in-house in such a fast-moving environment, we looked to bring in more advice to the town, and we looked at either hiring somebody or having an outside contractor, and what we settled on was a shared services arrangement with Amity, and Sean has been very helpful to us in this process. So Amity came on board in April of 2018, and they have been assisting us in all of our day-to-day IT needs, including the police, as well as with some long-term planning. And so we had asked Amity to do an analysis of our setup, and Sean can answer questions on this, but after a review, we determined that it would probably be good to have a complete network audit of our entire town, which is, if you remember, we went through this in December. So that network audit has taken place, and we have some suggestions to improve the town's IT server and infrastructure setup. It's mostly IT hardware and infrastructure related, not software, although there are some server software. So we have that PowerPoint this evening. During the completion of that, during this audit, we had an issue with one of our town servers, so we were able to restore our data with a server that Amity is letting us use, which we appreciate. So we have a temporary stable environment, but we had an issue with our town hall server, which we need to fix. So this highlights the need that we sort of need to move quickly on this, at least for that portion. We'll go through this in a little more detail, but our goal is to have a server room at the police, the new radio room at the police department for the police, and to utilize the fire department room for the town hall server infrastructure and for fire. There's a reason why we're going to have 2 different rooms, which Sean can explain in more detail. That both of the sites have much better security and ventilation and cooling than our existing site, which is in the finance office. So we intended on doing this in phases and doing a large project, but because of the town hall need, we sort of broke those out for possible action. It's sort of late. I have the documents with me because we sort of were just finishing this up, but I didn't really want to wait another month on that. So that's why it has it on the agenda as a IT equipment off-state contract, but we just have the information for you to review. So Sean, if you want to start the presentation.
What I'd love to do is really just kind of go over like a 30,000-foot view of what you have in front of you to try to explain what this is and what we're looking at. The end goal, if I start from the end and work our way backwards, is to have you guys in an environment that is stable, up-to-date, safe, and meets all of your needs with a 3 to 5 year plan going forward. The only way to get there, though, is to kind of back our way into it You're currently at the end of about a 5 to 7 year lifespan on your server. So you're right about where you should be. What you're thinking about right now and what this plan entails is timing-wise about where you should be. It's just that the plan is coming a little bit later. It's being pushed up a little bit faster. So with the idea of trying to get to that point where you have a stable 3 to 5 year plan and an ongoing environment that we can maintain, we had to take a step back and do a complete network audit of everything that you currently have, just to kind of get a baseline and idea of where you are and where you want to go. And as Tony said, in the middle of that, we had a server failure that we were able to stand up a temporary server to get you guys up and running again. Yeah, your backups are all set, but it kind of highlighted for us what was really important, and all of it's really important. But priority-wise, it kind of set the phases that are in this plan. So the first plan, the first part of this plan, actually, as outlined in this document, is the current project, which is the town hall. So that's going to be the complete replacement of the servers that are currently failing, or the one that did fail, plus the one that we have stood up for you temporarily. While replacing them, the long-term goal, again, if we look towards the end of it, is to have you in a more secure, stable environment that is climate controlled, that is security controlled for physical access, that is just best practices for a data center, which we've identified over at the police station as the radio room at the base of the tower. So this first project moves your servers over there. The problem with moving them over there and just putting them over there is that the cabling that we have throughout this entire campus, not to get too technical on it, is a fiber called OM1 that can only carry 1 gig. Current standard best practices has you at 10 gig, or should have you at 10 gig. So that's going to basically mean pulling all new cables through the conduits between all 3 buildings, which in this phase of the project would just be from that room at the police station to the town hall. It also includes toning and tagging all of the current wires that are running through this building, because half of them we don't know where they go or what they do. Isolating and finding things that are running in redundancy that shouldn't be, making things that should be redundant, and basically putting you in a stable environment where you can run without worrying about failure. Nobody really thinks about failure until it happens, and then when it happens, it's a really bad situation. So we're trying to avoid that at all costs. So this current project basically puts together, and I'm going to try to make it without throwing lots of letters and numbers, IDFs, MDFs, and all kinds of crazy stuff at you so that you can then ask questions after the fact. But in my head, visually, to try to explain it easier, I don't know if you guys remember, like in the 90s, when you got a new stereo system, it was 6 different pieces and it was 6 feet tall, and you had the record player on top and the tape deck underneath that and the tuner underneath that and the CD player underneath that if you were lucky enough, and the whole thing took up 4 feet. This VRTX solution that we're looking at right now is basically taking all those things and smushing them down into a single box. So servers work generally the same way. There's multiple servers that work in conjunction. The solution that TBNG, the vendor that we've been talking to, is proposing is literally a consolidation of 6 or 7 different physical machines into a single one. And again, with a look forward. So it's taking VRTX machine, it's moving it over to the police station. Firehouse, I'm sorry. So this plan was about 8 months in the making, and we've tweaked it 5 or 6 times in the process. The final plan has it at the firehouse. That includes running fiber from the firehouse back to the town hall so that they can actually access their data. When you run fiber, it's like running a highway. Without exit or entrance ramps on either end of the highway, you can't use the highway. So that includes switches. So in order to do this first phase of the project, you're looking at switches, fiber, and servers. That'd be phase 1. That would get your town hall, actually it's pre-phase 1, that gets your town hall up, running, stable, and where it should be for the next 5 to 7 years, in an environment where you can relax a little bit. We're in the maintenance phase at that point, as opposed to recovery phase, which is where we are now. Their phase, yeah?
We won't find ourselves in a similar situation. I know you said it's 10 gig capable, but obviously 10 gig is starting to
Right,
get
so
to
not in the
20,
foreseeable
40,
future. So what we've proposed actually is 12 strands of 10 gig fiber. We'd only be using 2 strands, so we have redundancy. So we have 10 gigs running over 2 separate strands, which leaves 10 open strands for future use. It basically allows us, as we grow, to just continue using new strands to increase bandwidth. or increase redundancy. If we find one of our cables has failed, we simply swap it over to the next fiber. So we've built that into the idea. We can only go so far into the future. I don't know at one point if we'll get to, terabyte speeds, but this will definitely get us up and over where the foreseeable future is. And again, we're looking at a 5 to 7 year plan. If we can get you situated for 5 to 7 year, then we can bring in a plan after that kind of keeps us in maintenance mode, which is much easier to budget for, much easier to plan for, and kind of takes all these peaks and valleys and costs and maintenance and evens them all out. So phase one of what they're asking to do, or what we're asking to do, is basically the stuff that is not, it's not pretty. It's all the stuff in the closets, it's all the stuff underground, it is the infrastructure, it's the foundation of the house that you guys are trying to build, or the building that you're trying to build. You're not gonna see it, there aren't gonna be pretty computer screens and lights and buzzers and all that kind of wonderful stuff, but it is absolutely imperative that it needs to be there, it needs to be strong, it needs to be able to support what you guys are about to lay on top of it for the foreseeable future. So that's running fiber between all campus locations, underground conduit, which is already in place, and putting those exit ramps and entrance ramps on either end, so switches. Also want to remember that when we're planning ahead, we're trying to do redundancy everywhere we can. So anywhere we talk about one exit ramp, it's actually 2 switches. So one switch goes down, the other switch picks up. We always try to build redundancy into every system. So should anything fail, there's always another system behind it that will pick right up without any sort of loss of functionality. So battery backups, cleaning up the police department data cabling, toning and tagging again. A lot of stuff that we found as we did this audit is basically things that have been built on top of things. So cabling that's been added to cabling, switches that have been adding to switches. We have switches in that stack in the back room that are plugged in, pulling power, that haven't actually been doing anything for 2 to 3 years now. So it's removing all of those things, it's toning out all of the wires, it's locating where they all go, it's making a map of everything, it's so that in the future we can easily maintain what you currently have. Network switching at the police department, at the data center for the police department, at the fire department, and at the fire department data center. So that's phase one, is laying that groundwork. Once phase one is done, you can start actually getting into the hardware, which is the servers you're going to lay on top of that foundation. So now you're talking about framing out the house, putting in the mechanical. Those are those VRTX platforms. So again, I don't want to get too crazy into the details unless you actually want me to. We could go on for a long, long time, but they're basically single functional units that take the place of what used to be 5 or 6 pieces of hardware. So they're cost effective, they meet your needs, they are expandable, and they can easily be scaled up as your network grows, and as bandwidth grows, as speed grows. At that point, the Town Hall VRTX would be reconfigured to also act as a backup set of virtual machines for other services, whether it's police, fire. Actually, I think we've got them set up to do fire servers on the VRTX platform. So again, everything is in redundancy. Should one server fail, there is no loss of service to any emergency services or town hall services. One server picks up when the other one fails instantaneously. End users don't even notice it's down. We get an alert, we come in, and we fix what's broken before anybody even knows it's broken. That's, again, the end goal. Currently, right now, you have backups, which are great. Backups require time to restore. So should a server go down, you're looking at half a day to a day if we can find another server to stick in the place of the broken one, just to restore what you currently have, which means you lose a day of work or service, things we don't want to happen. So again, redundancy not only in switching and at the layer, they call it layer 3, but we're also going for redundancy at the server level and switch level. We configure the CEN, failover from primary data center police to secondary center at fire department. So there's a lot of talk about where data lives and air gapping data. Air gapping is basically keeping data separate. With CGIS, we basically have specific things that can and can't touch each other. With emergency services, there are data that can't touch other data, if that makes sense. Police data can't touch fire data. Fire data can't touch town hall data. They all have their own sets of security that they have to be configured to. So what we do is we air gap it. And by air gapping is we physically don't allow that data to touch each other, but they can live in the same virtual space, if that makes sense. So should a server go down or a building collapse, the other building picks up instantaneously, and there is no loss of service. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that the fire data is living and working at the police station. It only means that should something happen at the firehouse, their services don't go down. It would just pick up at the police station until we report it back over to the firehouse again. And then finally, phase 3 is municipal remote services. Doing the same thing there, just pulling them into that overall environment. So what we're doing is defragmenting your siloed data centers. Right now you've got 3 separate domains. You've got data silos all over the place. We're basically defragmenting everything, putting it on a single domain, air gapping it all, following best practices, and making redundant systems across the board. That's the simplest way I can put it. If you've got any questions, I might be able to get.
What's the time frame on the phases?
Each phrase has a different time phrase, different time frame. From beginning to end, though, I'd be looking between 8 and 12 months to get from phase 1 straight through to the end of phase 3. It's not a small project, and it's definitely not going to be a fast project.
So 1 year, it's about 300,000. How are we paying for that?
So, and the costs are laid out.
I saw it's about 300,000.
So, we discussed that, and so the way that they do it at the school, which is definitely an option for us, is to lease it over a period of 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years.
So
Lease purchase.
lease purchase, right?
Yep.
Similar to a fire truck or another
So
vehicle.
by the time
You're done. You've paid for
you've
it.
paid for it, by the time we have to look at it again.
Right. So
Is
so
it-
looking at like what we've done at Amity, we just finished a 5-year lease on brand new servers and switches. Anything we get from here on out, we look at as kind of gravy. It's extra, but we're already having some issues with some of our servers, so we've already gone out to quote and to bid on 2 replacement servers. So we get to the end of the 5 years, and unfortunately, a 5 to 7 year lifespan on servers that are running 100% of the time is golden. If you can get there, you're great. 5 years should be a no-brainer. You've got 5-year warranty on the servers when you buy them as well from the factory. So at least you know, even if you do a 5-year lease, that you're not going to be paying for something that's broken in year 3. The factory warranty will cover it till year 5. At year 5 is though when you want your 3 to 5 year plan to start kicking in and say, okay, let's start thinking before failure what we're going to do to replace these servers. But leasing is an absolute.
Is there an implication on the recurring charges associated with current infrastructure?
So there are some recurring fees. Those fees are software based. It's going to be VMware, which is a significant cost, which is basically the software that virtualizes all of your servers. It allows you to use one machine to have multiple instances of servers instead of an entire room of servers. Now we can do a room of servers on a single rack. That is an ongoing cost.
That's in addition to what's on here.
It's included in these numbers.
It is, okay.
We are currently talking with some of our vendors about whether or not there are ways to do some cost savings and efficiencies with that based on our shared services contract that we're doing with the town. Amity happens to get some additional discounts from certain vendors, and I'm trying to make sure that they don't mind if we pass those sort of discounts along, knowing that I'm
It's your neighboring
staring on a camera right now. We're going to try very hard to find some cost savings and efficiencies in the software. This represents not a worst case scenario, but a standard case scenario. If you were to have to pay full price for everything,
Right.
these are these numbers. If I can surprise you, I will, but
Good.
I can't guarantee anything at this point.
And just out of curiosity, I know there's a significant move to cloud-based services in place of servers and storage. Is there a reason we're staying in this direction? Is it just more cost effective, or is there?
It's all about cost.
Okay.
So there's definitely moves to cloud. We've looked at it at the school a few times as well. Cloud-based services, while have many benefits, their one big downfall right now is cost. There is a significant cost to cloud-based versus on-prem. And for the size of what you guys are doing, the amount of Active Directory resources you're using, the amount of virtual servers you're using, cloud at this point would be a significant increase in cost over what we could do with on-prem services, at least, again, for this 5 to 7 year period that we're trying to get you set up for. Once we look at the 3 to 5 years after that, if costs are coming down, then that becomes part of your long-term plan to phase out on-prem and move up into the cloud. But at this point, that cost is nowhere near yet where it would be beneficial for you guys to do such a thing at your
Thank you.
scale.
Any other questions for,
Do you
yep.
know why the server went down?
This
Have you
particular
been
server,
able to ascertain what happened?
it was a mechanical failure of the hard drive. It started off as a mechanical failure of the hard drive. We rebuilt the hard drive. The drive failed the second time.
Yep.
And then actually, so you have 6 drives in that one server. It's the old configuration where you had the whole stack of CD,
Yep,
tuner, and all that wonderful stuff. We replaced the second drive in it. The third drive went. We ended up replacing 4 drives out of the 6, and then realized that it's actually a RAID controller, which is, again, I don't know how far you want me to go into it, but with 6 drives, you're basically running data on, you're saving the data in 6 different places on those 6 drives. It's spread out in parity, so that should one of the drives fail, again, there's redundancy there, your server doesn't go down. But should more than 2 drives fail, you will start to lose data. There's a RAID controller that controls what data goes on what drives. That's what failed, and it started overwriting the wrong sectors on the disk. It corrupted all of your disks. The entire server failed. At that point, we had a server that we had just decommissioned. That was our Exchange server that we wiped clean for you. We stood it up, stuck it in there. And again, we say it's temporarily stable because it's working currently, but the server we gave you was at 5 years when we gave it to you because we had just replaced it. So I wouldn't expect more than a year to 2 years of stable use out of that, and the quicker you can get off of it, the better.
So I had another question about this cable that you're pulling. You're pulling a 12 gig cable?
12 strands,
12 strand
gigs.
cable capable of carrying how much data?
10 gigs per strand.
Okay. So how much overcapacity do you have in that cable?
Well, so if you're running redundant on 2 strands, 10 gigs on each strand, then that leaves you 10 empty strands that you can use to push. So what ends up actually happening is because you've got 2 switches on either end, the data is running over both cables simultaneously. Should one of those switches go down, the other cable is still moving that data back and forth. It's up to the switches that are connected on the back plane on either end to decide how that data is routed and whether or not it's redundant or not redundant.
But anticipating future needs, would it make sense to pull additional cables through that conduit, or is there not capacity?
At this point, you're looking, I would say for the next 10 years, you should be absolutely fine pulling a single 12-strand cable with 10 gig capabilities. We don't even have, so CEN, who is currently supplying you with your DMARCs and your actual supply to the internet, couldn't do more than 10 gig bursts right now anyways. So even if you pulled, I mean, so right now technically you could run 120 gigs through one of those cables, which is well more than CN could ever give you. Even if in 10 years they could give you 120 gigs, you're still at capacity. I don't see there being a cost savings in running any additional fiber at this point. And because you already have the conduits in line, if in 10 years there's some huge jump in fiber technology, you'd be repulling the fiber anyways.
Okay.
So the infrastructure is there though to pull the fiber, which is nice. The conduits are there. We're not getting a backhoe here to do this.
Does the tagging and phoning of the other cables provide some benefit in terms of the voice platform?
Yes.
Okay.
Part of what they're doing is I've got a note on this,
So you're currently on a flat network.
a VLAN,
Yeah.
right?
So by doing this, we're actually creating a VLAN network.
Yeah.
So all traffic
That's
is
one of the reasons
segmented
why
at the
we're
switch level.
Okay.
So what we can do with that is we can make a VLAN specifically for VoIP, and then we can do QoS, which is quality of service, on the VoIP VLAN, which means should there be a burst of data through your network that slows everything else down, you can tell it that the VLAN that has your phones on it takes priority over everything else because that's what's important. Right now you can't do that. Right now you'd be just dumping phones on top of everything else. And so if there was a burst or there was some sort of traffic packet storm, you couldn't control whether a phone call got through, or whether an email got through, or whether some backups got through. Or so by VLANing out, segmenting out, we control traffic at the switch layer, which is much more control.
In security, as far as security, that's a different conversation entirely.
It's a different conversation, but it's built into, again,
you're
into
doing
what we're doing. Yep, it's all part of the project. So everything's done to best practices, including CGIS at the emergency services, at police and fire. There's a whole different set of security standards that we meet that we wouldn't necessarily have to meet here.
Thank you.
Sure.
One other thing that you mentioned, that if a server goes down, we would find you a server somewhere. And additionally, you said that the server you gave us now is 5 years old. Would it make sense to have an additional server that's not utilized, a new server, in case there's a problem, you can just pop it right online?
So once you get to phase 2, that's what that redundancy is between the fire and the police. So there's two identical VRTX servers sitting at both. Fire is always using fire, police is always using police. But in the event that one of them dies, it automatically kicks over to the other one and starts running. So should the police station server physically die, it'll automatically kick over to the fire station server. That server is big enough and robust enough to support their services. Without the two services, the data never touches.
Right, so
The police would never notice.
So I'm thinking 5 years out, when you get to that never land of, it's pretty good, but we don't know when it's gonna go, we have to watch it. At that point, if the police server goes, and you transfer everything to the fire station or vice versa, and they both go, you know, then you're up the proverbial creek. So that's the scenario that I'm thinking about.
Yep. So there are opportunities to do what we're currently doing actually at Amity is the new version of just beyond VRTX for a bigger enterprise environment is 3 servers controlling 2 SANs
But they'll all be the
for
same-
exactly that reason.
But they'll all be the same age.
Right. But 2 of them are always balancing the load, and the third one is there in case one of the first ones dies. It's a little bit more of an expensive model because you've got a third $12,000 server doing pretty much nothing just in case something dies. It could do some load balancing. You could use it for some file storage and stuff like that. But again, in this size environment, I'm not quite sure the cost, the ROI isn't there. You're not going to get what you're paying for in return for what you're paying, if that makes sense.
What you get in return is safety.
Right. Well, so we build redundancy into the system. You can have a full server failure once this is all complete, and no one will know that server's failed but us when we come in to fix it. End users will have no idea because services will automatically be transferred to a backup server, and then back onto the original again. So it's there. It's built in. You would have to have 2 full servers fail at separate locations before you had any sort of downtime. And at that point, you still have backups, and you have redundant backups.
Okay.
So that's where we would be standing up another server temporarily, restoring backups, and then trying to get both those servers in at the same time. And again, hopefully the chances of 2 servers going down simultaneously in 2 separate locations is slim. But we're mitigating risk. We're not eliminating risk. There's no way to fully eliminate risk.
So those that understand. Does anyone have, wow, not my wheelhouse. Sure, please.
Reason why we're not including the Woodbridge Board of Ed in like our plan in any of these phases.
That's a great question.
Good question, I don't know.
While we're undergoing potentially a big, expense, wouldn't it make sense to include them now for future consolidation?
We could certainly look into it.
Find out cost, et cetera, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I personally haven't looked at any of the Board of Ed servers yet. I know they're running 2 servers at this point for their business offices. The rest of their school is a Mac school. We're in contact with them a lot. We do some of their power school stuff, and we help out a little bit where they need some help, but for the most part, we don't have anything official in place, and so I don't know off the top of my head exactly what they're running, how old it is, whether it's ready or not ready, whether they have a plan in place for replacement. I absolutely find it out, though.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great,
idea.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay.
So we have later
yeah.
in the agenda, the funding and the state
Thank you.
contracts for the town hall portion. I mean, I don't know if you have any more questions for Sean, or we could just proceed with that when we get to that. No? Okay.
Sure.
You're all set
Yep.
No
Yep,
other
we're good.
questions for later? Good? Just the funding, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 5 on the agenda is award insurance bid, property, auto, liability, workers' comp, and I believe Roy Ivans is here?
Yes.
Is he here? Yep, I think I thought I saw him walk in. Thanks.
We have a broker that we get pricing from for our insurance every year, and every 4 to 5 years, we direct bid the entire package, and Roy helps us to do that. Because of a complicated environment, Roy helps us to make sure that we have everything covered and that we're doing it properly. So, if Roy, you want to just review the process?
So the process is to analyze and review the insurance policies in place to cover the town's assets. When I say town, I'm talking about the town and the Board of Education jointly. They're both covered under the same policies.
That's the Woodbridge Board of Education,
Yes,
not Amity, okay.
not Amity,
Right,
Woodbridge.
thank you.
Looked at the policies, did a physical review of the exposures, visited properties and so forth. Made a few tweaks to bring the policies up to date and to current. Developed insurance specifications, which we put out to the marketplace. We had 5 brokers express interest. 2 actually ended up producing proposals with the results that you see here.
So the expiring policies was 9/62/194, and the for the current year, and the proposal is 888/326. So as you can see, there's a almost $80,000 difference.
With no change in broker or insurance company.
Most of which is, well, a good portion of it's on the comp, but
Yeah, it's about half and
fair,
half.
about half and half, yeah.
Yeah.
HG Seeger, yeah.
Why am I having deja vu?
There are
Didn't we
previous,
No, but didn't we see this last,
so each
or
year
maybe I
HG
read
Seeger
it
gets
3
us
days
pricing.
ago when I read the package. Okay.
Yeah, each year HG Seeger gets us pricing, but every, say, 4 or 5 years, we bid the broker
Right,
relationship.
Right.
okay,
And,
got it.
To great effect this year.
yep.
Thank
But it's helpful too, because Roy helps bring a independent, a review of our policies and
very
our
valuable.
exposure and our limits on our properties, and we had some adjustments there you were
Right.
helpful with.
Right, the limit of insurance on the school was very low. It worked out to something less than $200 a square foot as replacement cost, which is wholly unrealistic. So we increased that by almost 50% to get to a closer range and still realize the savings overall in the insurance. And we're looking at options for cyber insurance, and we just saw something today with possible coverage for pollution, which is something that we've dealt with in the past here in town.
So if you could just, award the bid to HG Seeger and try
Are we
to,
gonna do it now?
Yeah.
Okay, all righty, great. Just to get the discussion started further, if all questions are answered, everybody okay? I'll make a motion that we award the insurance bid for property, auto, liability, and workers' comp, 2020, correct?
Yep.
Fiscal year, to HD Seagur in the amount of $888,326. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Is this on the agenda?
yeah, it's number,
5.
Award insurance bid.
Award, okay.
Yeah, there's a verb there.
Just
I
have
know.
one
Good
very-
point. Yeah.
Very quick question.
It's a little different.
Is the
but-
amount of deductible still the same?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Well, we have 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Roy. We have about 5 minutes before public comment, so I would respectfully request or make a motion that we go to, what can we get done in 5 minutes? Number 15, acknowledge receipt of the town clerk's report. Try not to hit the mic and clean out everybody's ears. You have in your packet a report from the town clerk from May 1st to May 31st. That's the monthly report of 2019, and the annual report July 1 of 18 through May 31st of 2019. And the numbers are there. If you want me to read them, I will. But I'll motion that we acknowledge receipt of both reports. Is there a second? Thank you. Oh, first, okay. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Can we go to minutes? Item 16. You have in your packet the Board of Selectmen regular meeting of May 8th, 2019. I will make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody have any corrections or
If I
additions?
could, just one
Yeah.
point of clarification, as far as the liaison report, it indicates on the Recreation Commission that there is a basketball clinic with former UConn coach Kevin Ollie. That's not true. It's actually, it's a program that is part of his foundation. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So should we add associated with?
You could say associated with Kevin Ollie Foundation, but yes, it's basketball for handicapped.
Okay, I'll motion that we already motioned and approved, I'll amend the motion, to approve the minutes of May 8th, 2019 with changes. You want
I'll
to
second
change?
that.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. And item 17, you have in your packet a resignation letter from Richard Kruger, who sent a note to me on June 10th. As of today, I'm resigning from the Government Access Television Commission, so I'll make a motion that we accept his resignation. Is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we accept this with regret, and he'll get a letter for his service. Thank you very much.
Close enough.
Close enough, okay. Okay, so it's close to 6 o'clock, and I will entertain public comments. Anyone like to come on up? And before we start, sorry, we're all over the book today, you guys, sorry. What number is it, 6? I'd like to preface this again by reminding everyone that our opinions may vary on any matters, but we should try to keep in mind that while we may not all agree, we're all advocating for what we believe is best for our town. Because our agenda is very full tonight, we'll limit comment to no more than 2 minutes each. Please do not feel you have to go on that long. If you can make a shorter statement, sometimes that's more powerful. Thank you. To help keep us on track, we'll have a timer and an audible chime when 2 minutes are up. Thank you for your cooperation and understanding. So, come on up. State your name and address, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alexia Belpron. I'm president of the Amity-Woodbridge Historical Society, 478 Main Street, Portland, Connecticut. For some 2 months now, we've been asking to be on your agenda to request changes to the lease for the tenancy, residential tenancy at the Darling House, but unfortunately we have not been offered a spot, so are here in public comment to provide information to you. We had hoped at this meeting to present to you a new tenant lease and can do that as soon as next week if we are permitted. We think it's very important to the health of the society and the museum to have a new caretaker this summer. I truly regret that influences outside of the Board of Selectmen and the Historical Society and conflicting interests have appeared to driven a wedge between what has been a very good relationship between the Historical Society and the town for 45 years. I have a board that I'm incredibly proud of that dedicates thousands of hours, has spent many, many hours educating themselves and improving their expertise to try to bring the best possible experience we can for the residents. And I think you've trusted us to do that. I believe we've earned your trust. I hope we can keep that trust. We want to return to fulfilling our mission. And I know that you guys have a lot of work to do as a Board of Selectmen, and you want to get to that work. So I am hoping that we can get a resolution to this tonight. We are looking forward to continuing all of the work that we do. You're going to hear about that from some of my other board members. And Rebecca, one of our board members, will be reading a letter to you explaining our needs and our requests.
Thank you.
Hi, Rebecca Harlow, 1112 Johnson Road, Woodbridge. And I have a letter that I believe all of you have received that I will read to you now. Dear Selectmen of the Town of Woodbridge, the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society and the Town of Woodbridge have worked collaboratively for the last 45 years to operate and maintain the Thomas Darling House as a historic house museum, providing recreational and educational services to the town of Woodbridge, other Connecticut towns, and out-of-state visitors. Under our long-term lease agreement with the town, we, the society, have been assigned and carried out the responsibility of selecting and overseeing a caretaker to perform those duties assigned by the society to ensure the protection and preservation of the Thomas Darling House and its contents, which we note belong to the society. The lease provides that the caretaker is to reside on the property, and for the past 45 years, the caretaker has lived in the caretaker cottage adjacent to the main house. For over 4 years, the caretaker has been Mr. Ethan Schneider, a candidate selected by us and approved by the Board of Selectmen. He has been given a series of leases on the cottage, most recent of which expired on October 31st, 2019. Since that date, he has been living there on a month-to-month tenancy. On May 31st, 2019, we gave Mr. Schneider a 30-day notice to quit the premises effective June 30th, 2019. We did so intending to replace him with another caretaker. We did this only after a good deal of soul-searching, taking this action for his failing to discharge his duties as caretaker in a satisfactory manner. During his tenancy over the last 4 years, Mr. Schneider has received numerous poor performance evaluations given to him in meetings at which we notified him of many violations of his caretaker duties. Among them are the following: regularly failing to perform his caretaker duties or failing to do so on time, and failing to provide caretakers reports to the society, making unauthorized modifications and additions to the property, principally to the land surrounding the house on which he was running farming operations and the carriage house. In addition, Mr. Schneider's changes in the sloppy way he has maintained them have negatively impacted the society, safety and convenience of visitors to the house, our museum collections, the museum experience, and dramatically increased utility costs, leaving the caretaker apartment vacant in times of inclement weather without reporting his absence to the board, which has resulted in damage to the Thomas Darling House, subletting a room in the caretaker's apartment without notifying or getting approval from the society, listing an item from the society's collection for sale, and inviting unauthorized visitors to the museum. As a board, we have expended an inordinate amount of time and energy in an attempt to correct Mr. Schneider's failure to carry out his caretaker duties in a satisfactory manner. Over the course of these 4 years, a study...
We have the letter in our packet, and it was distributed this morning. Have all the board members had a chance to read it? Yeah. Are you comfortable that she should not go on? We were at the 2-minute.
That's up to you, but
Well-
if we stop it, we can simply put the letter into the record.
I think that would be helpful, because we have a lot of
That
folks
way.
here tonight
But
that
that's
want to,
your
I thank you,
decision.
though.
Sure.
We have it all. Thank you.
Unless someone else wants to.
Yeah, there you go.
That too.
They get another half. Okay. Thanks, David.
Yep. You're gonna miss me.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara Baldwin, 46 Orchard Road. I'm the treasurer of the Amity-Woodbridge Historical Society. One thing that was not included in the letter was some highlights from the Historical Society over our last several years. I'd like to tell you about some of the things we've done. We've increased our paid membership, increased our number of regularly scheduled events and newsletters, and increased contract through our distribution list from 100 to 400 contacts, and purchased through our membership contributions some an improved hanging sign, archival storage and supplies, energy and UV efficient shades, returned our beehive oven to use, accurate reproduction chandeliers, lined our chimneys, and repainted and carpeted the caretaker apartment, as well as worked on numerous grants for the benefit of the museum and caretaker apartment, including a most recent one for $25,000.
Thank you. Anyone else? Still with the boat.
Let's not go into that. This is me. I'm Mary Dean from 8 Mulberry Road in Woodbridge. I'm the vice president of the Historical Society. I have been asked to give you some good news. As Alexia told you when she spoke to you all in February, we were hoping to receive an invitation from the state of Connecticut to submit a proposal for what's known as a Good to Great grant. And I'm here to tell you that we have received that invitation, which is very good news for us all. It's for a potentially sizable amount of money to make capital improvements to the Darling House buildings. And it's to be for the benefit of the programs and the expansion of the programs that we currently give to serve children and adults. We've been asked to submit this proposal. It's due in 2 weeks. We need to get back to work on it, and I will say goodnight as soon as I can in order to do that. The other good news for you all is that there is no anticipated cost to the town for this grant. There is a 25% match, but the Historical Society has voted to meet that match and to supply the money required. Now, only the Historical Society as a 501c3 can make this application, but the partnership of the town is not only valuable, but it's essential to us because we must have a 10-year lease that we can count on being in effect over the period of the time that this grant proposal work is going to be in effect, and also that the programs that it is meant to support will be provided. There has to be assurance that these improvements will be to the benefit of the programs that the 501c3 is providing. Now, my purpose here is just to alert you that I've heard remarks that lead me to fear that we won't be able to certify that our lease is considered binding, and or that we may be asked to vacate it before 2027. We cannot submit this proposal to the state in good faith if we cannot be assured that the town will honor the terms of the lease that it's now in effect. The society cannot be asked to invest that much of its money for improvements to a building over which we are given no authority. We ask the Board of Selectmen to reaffirm your commitment to the lease agreement we currently have and our ability to continue as agents to the town in managing the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I've been elected to finish reading the letter. My name is Lisa Flaherty, and I live at 139 Beecher Road in Woodbridge, and I am a board member of the Amity-Woodbridge Historical Society. When we notified Mr. Schneider in April of 2009 of our intentions to entertain other applicants for the caretaker position, he ceased all communications with us regarding his caretaker responsibilities, and since March 2009, we have not received any rent on the apartment or reimbursement for the costs of water or electricity furnished for his farming operations. Uncompensated electrical costs have increased about $1,000 each of the 4 years Mr. Schneider has run the farm. Water charges are over $1,000 per year. These charges represent a serious shortfall in the revenues we need to conduct our nonprofit museum operations. Experience has now led us to the conclusion that a farmer's focus and perspective on site use is legitimately different from that of the society, which must fulfill its obligations to the town to make the house, its outbuildings, and property a public benefit through the stewardship and programs it provides. Our proposal will allow us to better balance the needs of farm and museum operations. Since the society has had farmers serve in the caretaker position, the society and the town have included language addressing farming in the caretaker lease. We have since realized that this is impractical and insufficient to address the needs of the society, the town, and the farmers. We ask the Board of Selectmen support us in the actions we have taken and want to take as being in the best interest of the Darling House, the society, and the town of Woodbridge. We ask that A, a version of the caretaker's lease be approved that reflects language pertinent to a caretaker duties and have a summer start. B, a second lease signed by the town and the farming tenant specifically address the farming operations on the site, needs of the site as a historic property, for remuneration of utilities used by a farm lease to the society, and cleanup of the structures of any farming-related items like tarps to put the land back to its previous state. C, the town, Mr. Schneider, and the society discuss his needs as a farmer on the Darling House property, needs we are certainly willing to help him meet so long as we are paid for our costs and are assured that his operations do not unduly impact our obligation to operate the Darling House as a historic museum dedicated to the public interest. Respectfully submitted, the Amity-Woodbridge Historical Society Board of Directors. And I won't read you all our names, but we're all there.
Thank you.
Do we have a copy?
Alexia Bell-Perrin, Should I say it?
You wanna you want the names read into the record? Is that what
No,
you're
no, I'm
asking?
sorry, just the document.
Yeah, she has it, yeah. Yep, we have it too. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Barbara Joyce Simpson. I live at 5 Oak Hill Lane in Woodbridge. I thought long and hard about coming here to speak about this topic, but I am going to say what I have to say, and you can take it whichever way you like. I attended the Town of Woodbridge budget meeting on May 10th of this year. Under the town charter, there's a requirement for a quorum of 250 Woodbridge taxpayers be present in order to request changes in the proposed budget. That's fine. I believe it's in the charter, that's fine. However, there was no required pre-registration, so just anyone walking in the door was counted. I thought that was improper. The count had to be taken twice because of the chaos in the room. Counting chairs, counting people, people moving around, people coming in the doors and out the doors. It was really poor. Most distressing to me, however, was the behavior I personally witnessed of 2 town employees. Despite being at the meeting to represent their respective offices, as soon as the count procedure was announced, Jeanette G. and Stephanie C. ran for the exits. They admitted they were leaving the room in order to lower the head count. Had the count been close to 250, this could have affected the total outcome of the meeting. From my vantage point, it was impossible for me to see if other town employees exited other doors. I was right by this door where these 2 people left and saw them. People challenged them. They admitted, we're leaving the room. We don't want to be counted. So that was very poor. Woodbridge taxpayers pay the salaries of these people. Such behavior is unseemly. I am asking, therefore, that the first selectman reprimand improper behavior such as this, and that she reiterate to all town employees that fair procedures, democratic processes, timely notice of upcoming meetings, etc., must be upheld in every circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name's Ethan Schneider, and I live at 1907 Litchfield Turnpike, and I am the caretaker that's being discussed. And I, excuse me, I also provided a written letter to the board that I hope everyone received and was able to look through. And so I would just like to mention just a few things in terms of the financial obligations. First and foremost, as I've mentioned to the members and also to the society, I am not I'm not paying rent. I have been in a situation that seemed to be going on indefinitely, so I placed my rent payments in an escrow account in order to culminate the situation, which has been going on for multiple years. I do not feel that I've ever been provided a truly detailed and accurate description of my caretaker duties or compensation for said caretaker duties. Also, as per my lease, the Historical Society pays $275 annually for the water bill, and I reimburse them for the rest. So the size of the water bill is indifferent, as I pay the balance every year. And you guys have a receipt for the water bill that I paid on April 15th, 2019, in the amount of about $685. Also, my rent has increased. The previous farming tenant's rent was $850. My rent was increased to $900, which is $600 annually as an increase. in order to make up for, as was cited, electrical costs that are incurred by the farm, which are absolutely accurate. Again, in 2018, my rent was increased again to $950 a year. And then again in October of 2018, when this month-to-month lease was signed, it was increased to $1,000 per month, all citing electricity expenses for the farm. And I did provide also the annual budget for the town.
You're at close to 2 minutes, so wrap, please. Thank
You got it.
Or
And
have someone else read the rest of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. It's, you have, Jerry has it, yeah, right. Right, thank you. Good reminder, Mika, thanks. Anyone else?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll get up in between if you want.
Hello, my name is Leon Torrance. I live at 17 Vernon Court. I'm the restoration specialist for the Historical Society. I was watching this on TV and had hoped I didn't need to come in, but I was embarrassed by what I think is bullying and a lot of people ganging up on Ethan, which I think is what's been happening ever since Don Menzies has stepped away. I'm frankly embarrassed for the town that it's gotten to this point. I had hoped to remain away to be objective, but I couldn't watch Ethan get tarred and feathered when I don't think he's liable for what he's being accused of. I do think it's very important that we all sit down at the same table and discuss these things. I think it's important that the lease that Ethan now has for farming also includes tenancy that allows him to remain at the farm for another till the end of December. And my wish is that when you guys deliberate later on this evening, that you will take into account the 6 months of work that I've done developing a sustainable plan for the entire Thomas Darling property, not just the Woodbridge Historical Society, but the Conservation Commission, the Boy Scouts, the farmers, the CSA, and all interested parties. I think the main goal of this board should be to have a vision for this property that makes it sustainable over the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Oh, Karen, sorry.
Hi, my name is Karen Baldwin-Kravitz, 61 Forest Glen, and I come tonight in my capacity as a fire commissioner. Real problems with the police dispatch system and structure have dominated my involvement on the Fire Commission for the last 2 years. And it is my understanding those issues have existed for many years preceding my involvement. There have been efforts to improve the situation, but structural problems remain unaddressed. There is no more apt demonstration of that truth than what happened last week. The good news is we have an opportunity to get it right. Our town residents, our students, staff, and first responders deserve that and are counting on us. We need the assistance of an independent professional with expertise in emergency response who will review all systems and procedures and make recommendations to the BOS as quickly as that can feasibly be completed. The Fire Commission would welcome an opportunity to meet with the Board of Selectmen jointly if it is your desire to discuss that further. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Paul DeCoster. I am another member of the Board of Directors of the Amity Historical Society. And I want to say that since reading the letter to the Board of Selectmen, anticipation of this meeting by Rebecca, we have been given a copy of a reply submitted to the board by Mr. Schneider. His response shows pretty clearly that there are two sides to every story. No kidding. Without getting into the substance of his rebuttal, We believe that this demonstrates differences of opinion between him and the society, which continue, and that our proposal, which I think will be on the agenda tonight, to separate the functions of farming and caretaking at the Darling House is in the best interest of the farmer, the caretaker, and the society, which is the party responsible for the house's upkeep. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 7 on the agenda is the Administrative Officer Director of Finance report. A is monthly report. Tony?
Okay.
Thank you.
The first thing I want to announce is that the state budget, final adopted state budget has come in, and there is no municipal contribution to teachers' retirement in the adopted budget. That's the first thing. Second thing is that the budgeted revenues in the town budget is $72,000 more than the state budget. So we're actually we're ahead of the game by about $72,000. We most of that, almost all of that, is in ECS funding, and we budgeted the initial suggestion by the governor, and the adopted budget came in higher. That's actually all of the difference. So I'll have to announce that. Secondly,
I want to say thank you. Good news. Thank you.
Secondly, I have the monthly report through for May through the end of the year, and the surplus about $560,000. Given our $400,000 contribution to fund balance, we are at about $160,000 surplus, or just under $6 million. Some highlights for you. The interest income is slightly under $200,000 higher than our budget. We've discussed that before. A new item here is that the town received additional $90,000 in special education excess cost funds, which just came in May, so that was unanticipated, at least in that magnitude. So that's an additional surplus. That's the major item. The others are pretty similar to last month, including a deficit in charge for services of $96,000 and our surplus of other revenues of $270,000. There's a number of expenditure departments which I've listed for you in the little summary sheet here. I'll go through some of the larger ones. The Board of Selectmen has about a $12,000 surplus due to projected savings in legal fees. The Finance Department has a $40,000 surplus for payroll clerk elimination. On the agenda tonight is a deficit of $25,000 due to increased recycling costs, which we have to fund. Human Services has a surplus of about $20,000 due to some staffing issues that they've had that caused a surplus. The library also has a surplus about $45,000, again due to the elimination of a part-time bookkeeper position and some other staffing issues that they've had. The employee benefits has a surplus of about $35,000. And finally, the Board of Education, and this projection is at $289. You heard Bob say that it's maybe closer to $260, the $260 range. So those are some of the major surpluses that are projected.
Any questions?
So the $559,536 net budgetary plus an operation.
Right.
You offset by that by the 400
That's
fund
correct.
balance.
Correct.
It's what, 159?
159,536. That's the actual cash contribution to the fund balance.
Right. Then we also used about 220,000 from Amity return funds.
That is included in that figure.
That's
in other words,
the 559.
right. So
Okay.
that's right. So if we didn't do that 220, then this would be, 1, 2, 3, 379.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Tony.
Okay.
B is funding requests. Let's see if I'm in the right place here. Okay, sorry. line item transfer number 1819 in the, -35 in the amount of $66,000. This request is to fund a truck replacement for Public Works that was eliminated from the FY20 capital budget to purchase with current funds. Just to get us started, I'll make a motion we approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Tony on this?
So,
This is one of the final ones that we
we
discussed last
pay-
month. Where
so
we
we're
was.
paying this out of, Amity surplus funds?
Right, right. This is one of the, we had a bunch last month, and this is one of the
This
final
is
ones.
same type thing.
Right, same
So
type of thing, right.
We took it out of
Next year,
last year's budget, or next
next
year's
year's, right.
budget to keep that down, but we're paying it
out of this year's,
Amity
correct.
funds this year.
That's correct.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next one is line item transfer number 1819-36 in the amount of $12,000. This request is to paint the Woodbridge Senior Center. I'll make a motion we approve. It's coming from various accounts. I don't know if
Right.
you wanna talk about that and going to repair and maintenance building. Thank you. Any questions on this?
Who's doing the work?
We haven't identified that yet. We have to get some quotes and
Okay.
see how
It's
much,
just for the money.
right? We have a
Thank you.
quote from a while back, but we have to
Go out and-
refresh that, and see if it's still accurate, right?
Thank you.
I might add, it's sorely needed. It's,
This wasn't taken out of next year's budget though, right?
No,
This-
this wasn't,
Have a surplus
no,
in the human services.
other accounts. Right.
this was not proposed in next year's budget, right?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, next one is request for funding number 1819-37 in the amount of $25,000. We're doing such a good job of recycling, that we have to pay increased recycling fees. So Tony, do you want
I
to
can
explain
explain.
this
So
further?
at the beginning of the year, actually last year, we received a credit. At one time it was $16 a ton. That was the highest I remember. For every ton of recycling, we would get $16 a ton. It went to zero for a few months this year, and now it's at $65 a ton. Keep in mind, solid waste is $62.71 per ton. So it actually costs us more to get rid of recycling than it does for solid waste.
Yep.
Primarily because if you don't have the commodities market for recycling, which is part of the problem, then it's more expensive because there's a lot of moving parts. There's magnets and air blowers and all kinds of stuff to separate the recycling because it's a single stream. Whereas solid waste is just in a burn plant. It's much simpler to eliminate.
So we shouldn't recycle.
No, that's not the point of this.
Can't say that out loud, it's terrible.
But
Ugh.
So we budgeted.
we budgeted for not to have to pay for recycling, and it's now up to $65 a ton.
But for next year.
We budgeted at $65 a ton, yeah.
We used to separate recyclables into paper and cardboard and
Right.
cans and glass
Right.
and plastic. What happened to that?
The state
That
has
idea.
told us, right, Warren?
Yes.
That we have to do single stream recycling, which is to combine everything. I believe it was an attempt to try to make recycling easier for people.
So people did it more.
So people did it more, and then,
Now we're
Yeah,
paying
because
for
that
them to
originates
separate
at
it.
your
yeah,
house.
a lot of it's the glass.
Jerry, did I make a motion?
You made the motion, but I was about to ask who seconded it.
Okay. Would someone like to second it? Okay, thank you, Terry. Okay, any other questions on this? All in favor?
Contingency.
Yep.
Right.
So what is that?
I have at the end, I have a sheet here I'll hand out to you. I anticipated that you were gonna ask that
This
question.
year's, this year's contingency?
Yeah.
Okay.
This year's.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Okay,
Now I have two more.
thank you. Oh, well then you'll
Person
take 'em.
to tonight's discussion. First is for the town hall server replacement. And I know this is somewhat last minute, but as we indicated in our discussion. 1819-38.
Would this be incorporated into this phase one of the proposal, or is it?
No, it's gonna be done before phase one.
Oh, okay.
Just because by the time for phase one, we have to actually get the pricing and get the financing and get the approvals, for phase one, even if you combine phase one and two, that may take a few months to do.
But it's integrated into the plan.
Yes.
In other words,
We just took that part of the plan and carved it out,
okay.
just because we didn't think we wanted to wait too much
So this is
longer.
the server that failed,
Yeah,
that needs to be replaced.
correct.
Got it, okay. I'll make a motion.
Okay, to approve funding request number
Eighteen
1819,
38.
in the amount of 34.
34,085.
085, okay.
Aye.
$34,085.
I'll second it, just to get the discussion going. Does anyone have questions for Tony?
So this comes out of Amity surplus funds.
Correct, yeah.
But aren't we lease purchasing this?
No, this is just the town hall piece we want to do right now. The lease purchase would be for, the police, and a lot of the cabling that's required for this project. This just purchases a town hall server and gets us a connection, that's the next one, is the connection to the fire department. There's a lot of other cabling and infrastructure and VLANs and switches that have to be done. That would be part of the lease purchase, which we'd go into more detail when we get to that point.
But we could do the whole thing at one time.
You could.
And lease purchase it all.
could.
right?
You
But we
could.
don't think that's a
I didn't want to wait
good way to
another 2 months.
proceed because of the status of that.
Correct.
I note in here that the town has $20,000 in a technology reserve. That was a couple of years ago when we.
That's what we originally funded it to.
Right,
to
but
re-
it's been sitting there for a
Right,
while, so we
correct.
have, because the whole project is 54,085.
Right. So you could lease purchase the whole thing and wait a month or two, and that's a decision you could make. I just,
Personally, I'm
pay
not
for something
comfortable
to-
doing that, having
Right.
lived through the server death that we went through a
Right.
month or so ago. It was very unpleasant here. I'm afraid, listening to Sean, that the 5-year loaner
right.
may give out.
That's the risk.
It's just my opinion. So I think it's a good
Our
thing to
backups are
approve it
okay. It's
now.
just the
Right.
downtime that we would have. Right.
Any other questions?
And before you act on this, the next one is the cabling to get us and the switching to get us to the alternate location.
How much is that?
That one is 40, 45, 43, 43.
And are you saying we have to do them both
Yeah.
together?
You have to do them both together. And,
That's timing wise, I get.
they're
I
on
get
state
separate,
their
but
pricing's off
timing.
state contract, which is later in the agenda. If you want to do that first and put these on hold, you can certainly do that.
So that's about 100,000 that we're now not lease purchasing, we're
Right.
paying for.
That's correct.
And how are we paying, I'm sorry, I don't see that, how are we?
I haven't
paying?
handed it out yet. It's the same funds. And that's pretty much it for that funding source.
Would you like to
So
vote?
one third of the entire project we're paying for, and 2/3 were lease purchase.
Right.
And
The benefit of.
because we're afraid to go 2 months with the existing server.
Right. We could take that risk and we can certainly do the entire project as a lease purchase.
I'm not qualified to make that
I'm coming to
decision,
get
but
you if they fail.
financially, I certainly like that.
Is it 2 months?
Way to go.
I guess the question is it 2 months? What's the process in terms of us
Well,
getting the,
we have to, because the pricing we have is just budgeted pricing for
Right.
those two, so we'd have to get the pricing for that. Then we'd have to get the approval for that, and those are much larger capital projects. So we have approval processes to go through, and it's as quick as you want it to happen, I guess.
So we have a motion and a second for the first funding request, 1819-38.
so in essence, I'm sorry?
That's okay, we have a motion on that one. You have more discussion. Shoot,
I
I'm
suppose you
sorry.
could
So what is
possibly
this
lease.
doing to the Amity funds, with return funds? Where are we now with,
We have, let's see, let's do a quick calculation here. 3, 4, 50, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 20. We probably have a few $100,000 left, $100,000 left. That's a part of that 559.
Is there a benefit to having less of a lease?
You amortize the
Over the
cost of the, it would just be a lower cost, less interest if you paid it now.
Do I understand it correctly, is that this is money that has not yet been put into the fund balance?
That's correct.
It's still in that general fund?
Correct.
So that, I mean, to me, it makes sense to take the money out of that pot before we put it where we can't get it anymore and pay for this.
You can get it,
Well,
but
you can get it.
there's a lot, there's a lot.
I
the
understand,
process
you,
is
you
a
can
lot
get it,
different.
it's not like it's, you know, it's a
Right.
20-year bond, but
Right.
it's a much bigger deal.
Right.
So you're talking about the Amity surplus funds pot?
It's a mixed pot. It's the
I
budget.
agree
it's the-
with you.
It's the budget surpluses. It's everything that's not gonna go into that nebulous fund balance, which
Yep. Okay,
nobody wants to touch.
I agree with you. That we should
Actually,
take
I
it
would,
out.
if we're paying cash for 1/3 of it and then thinking about lease for 2/3 of it, it's less than 200,000. You could take that out of the fund balance and just pay for
You
it.
could.
Why pay the interest?
You
on it?
could. That's certainly an
Yeah,
option.
but
I
then
mean,
you
this
have
is
it.
important
Are
stuff
you
that
talking-
we need. It's
you
good.
could
You're talking
certainly
about the
meeting.
fund balance or out of the Amity surplus?
talking
You
about
could do
the
a fund
fund
balance.
balance.
You
Fund
could certainly do that, and that would avoid the interest, and that would, is a good, it's a reason, you know, emergency stuff is
To me, that
one
makes
reason.
sense.
Plus,
Yeah.
it's
Then you'd have to have a town meeting for that.
Yeah, you would have to have, but that's all right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
No, a town meeting doesn't call, we just had
Special.
one.
You gotta do notice in the newspaper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because of the total and
Because of the
that's what
fund, the total
postponed
coming
this.
out of fund balance,
Right.
Yeah.
right. But that's certainly a way to, an avenue, yes.
What do you guys think?
I'd be curious to know, usually rolled into the lease arrangement is some sort of maintenance and things of that nature. I wonder if you pay for it up front, what the ongoing costs would be for
We
that.
haven't gotten to that much detail yet on that phase. That's our next project here for the next month.
Well,
But if that's a
To identify
if we're
ongoing costs
considering
and
going
stuff.
in that direction, then there's no reason not to move forward on these two
no, I mean,
items.
we could approve tonight and then and then decide how to pay for the other 200,000.
Yeah, you can do that, yeah.
That makes me feel better,
mean,
given the
yeah.
fact that
And then you
we're
have more information
operating
in
in a
terms of
borrowing.
Right.
what it truly will look
Right.
like.
Right.
Okay. So we have a motion at least for the 1819-38 in the amount of 34,085. Is everyone comfortable on that discussion? This is the first part. This is
Yes.
replacing the server.
Right.
Okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to do the second one now?
Yep.
Okay, and we can talk about that one.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. let's-
This is a different
the-
part of the project.
Right.
It's just, well, there's. Okay.
Thank you.
Again, this is,
Okay, yeah, I can tell you what this is.
So this is request for funding number 1819-39 in the amount of $43,762 to fund replacement wiring, switches, and cabling for town hall, as well as fiber optic lines and switches in the new data center.
So we already kind of discussed this, it's the
Yeah,
same
right.
100,000, so I mean,
Okay.
unless
That's 40
anybody
and
has
30.
So to get it going for discussion, I'll make the motion to approve that. Is there a second? Any discussion on this?
So the, just to give you sort of an outline of this, which I have under the purchasing, the bid part, is half of it is for the fiber optic cabling that you discussed, which is the fiber optic line. And then, that's 22. 14 is for the switches on either end of the line, and then the rest is for support and UPSs and some other minor items. So this allows us to connect to which would be the firehouse, which is where we put that data center. That's that first part of it. And then Sean indicated the police part is later in the project. There's also some the VLAN work in town halls and this phase also.
A lot of alphabet, VLAN, VMAX, I was
Yeah.
looking. Okay. So I'll make a motion, we have a motion and a second, I'll call the question, unless there's any other discussion. Okay. All in
I just
favor?
want to,
Oh.
just one point, just
Okay.
literally, is just in regard to the ongoing maintenance for these types of, projects.
Right.
It's just, we can just make sure
We
we've
will certainly
got a
do that.
handle on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll report that at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's good, okay. All in favor? Okay, thank you very much. That's it for funding requests now?
That's it, yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Item, we go, I guess it's C, request to waive bid purchase policy. 2 items, the police vehicle off-state contract, we'll handle that one first.
Yep.
Can I just say something? Terry has to leave, and we have a couple of action items that I think that you wanna be voting on, and we're gonna run out of time because of the public hearing. There's a public hearing, so I would suggest that we skip and go to the 2 things that we need action items under my report, as well as at 7 o'clock you have the public hearing, which.
That make you feel
we need
comfortable?
5 members of the Board of Selectmen to vote for an amendment to the ordinance that was published. So that's my only
I
concern.
think we should definitely do that, and I don't wanna leave Terry out, but do you think we have enough time to do these other ones?
Probably not, Joe, but I think we could get started at least. We can do the
Yeah.
Bank Street one quickly.
We can do those.
It's up to you, I'm just making that suggestion so she can be here to vote.
Well, we can give it a try, I guess.
Yeah, let's give it a whirl. So what are you saying we go to first? That
Go
would
to
be-
Bank
Why don't we
Street.
go to the.
Okay,
Bank
town
Street.
council's
Bank Street
report.
is pretty.
Let's
Why
start.
don't we get rid of
Bank-
the, 7, we have to wait till 7.
7, that's the
Yeah.
problem.
Right,
Okay.
So Bank,
timing wise, noticed in the paper for 7.
Bank Street, we've had this ongoing discussion with the owner of 18 Hazel Street, who's Jim Urbano, who's requested the opportunity to either have an abandonment of the parcel right next to his, which the town owns, and or to have the right, a license agreement in perpetuity to make improvements on that lot, because it's overgrown, there's trees down, there's trees that need to be cut, and he wants to make it look nice before he starts the construction of his condominiums. So we've been going back and forth. Today, I received an email from his lawyer that says Jim is okay with an agreement with the town rather than a full easement to cover his ability at his cost to regrade, landscape, and maintain the Bank Street paper road area adjacent to his 18 Hazel Street project. It will do much to improve the area that is now an eyesore. So he's come around to the idea that the town will give him allow him the opportunity pursuant to an agreement that we're gonna draft to go in and clean it up. The town retains ownership of the property. The town retains the right to possibly use it for a pathway to get to some of our other publicly owned properties, which could hook up to some trails. So I think this is a good result, and I think I would ask for a motion to approve the ability to give Mr. Urbano the opportunity to clean up the lot. We will, of course, make sure he gives us the appropriate insurances, and be working with the building department, Terry Gilbertson, to make sure everything is done proper. That's it.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we allow town council to draft an agreement as discussed
Right.
with, between the town and Mr. Urbano, with the items you discussed.
Yep.
And including insurance and the right of the town to be able to use it to connect to other public
Other
town-owned
trails,
properties
yeah.
in the area. Is that enough? Is that okay? All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and he's okay, Jim's okay with this, which is helpful.
So the motion is to authorize Jerry to negotiate.
Just enter into an agreement with his
Enter into
attorney,
an
Bob Life.
Yeah, I know. So it's gonna be an agreement or a license in perpetuity
No,
running with the land?
It's not gonna be anything in perpetuity, and it's not gonna be running with the land, which I didn't think was appropriate for the town to do, and Jim has agreed that it will just be a one-shot time to clean it up if he needs. I'm gonna ask that if he needs to do this in the future, he'll come back to the town, and the town will have to
So
decide.
we're gonna allow him to improve it but not maintain it?
Exactly.
And they're
He's
okay with
okay?
that?
He's okay with that, yeah.
Okay.
If
Well,
he
we'll
need,
find
if he
out.
needs to maintain, if he needs, if
Well,
he
he
We'll
doesn't
find
sign it.
out, but
If he needs to maintain it, I'll come back to you and I'll ask you, but, or he can come back on on an issue by issue basis and ask for the right to go in and maintain it as well.
So if he, well, he's obviously gonna have to maintain it, because if it's overgrown now, it's gonna be overgrown in 3 months.
Well, there won't be any tree stumps on the property, that's the problem with it.
But he, you know, if he wants to finish it and make it look good, plant grass or plant shrubbery.
Well, I know.
So my question is, does legally that entitle him to, quote, have use of the property?
No,
But he's using the property.
to clean it, it's gonna be
Okay.
limited to cleaning.
So my follow-up question is, if he has access to this property and is cleaning it up for his own benefit, does he have some future claim on that property?
No.
Additionally, I would consider to be beneficial to the town as well, that it looks better than.
Well,
Right,
the
it
thing
is,
is, if there's if people use your yard to cross to a different area, and they've been using it for, I think it's 15 years, that becomes a right-of-way. You lose your right on that piece of property, and I don't want
that's
that.
a simplistic way of.
Not if you give,
It's
not if you
simplistic,
give
right?
the
Well,
person
I'm not a lawyer.
No, I know.
I could do numbers, but anyway.
That's
Not if-
good.
not if you give
I
the
didn't say
person
that
permission to
sarcastically,
use the
I'm
land.
just
Okay.
You
saying.
can't
So
claim
it's-
adverse
Would you rather
possession.
me say it's not accurate, or it's simplistic?
He's being generous.
You know,
I
I'm
was being
trying,
generous.
in layman's terms, this is what I'm trying to get forward. I just don't wanna see this, you know, developing in a different direction. We'll have to come back.
You're right, and that's
Yeah.
what we were trying to negotiate out of, that he
Yeah, so
originally
it'd
wanted.
have to be very constricted.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
Well, the main thing there is time.
right.
Your main concern is time. If he's only gonna be allowed to have 30 days to go fix it up, then he can't ever start claiming
Won't become a
prescriptive
right-of-way that
easements
way, is what
and
you're
all
saying,
that.
'cause it
Yeah,
won't be-
I can't imagine he's gonna agree to that, but if he does, that's.
Well, I just read you what he said.
Yeah, but it didn't speak to like
But you know it's
maintaining
gonna have
it
Didn't
and all
speak to
that.
maintenance, but
You know he's gonna have to maintain it.
it's not that big of a lot. The town can maintain it. If, we have a building department go out there and mow it if it
There's a
gets
lot of
overgrown.
town property we don't
Wait a
maintain, but we can't go there.
Well, if you offer him that, he might agree
Well,
to it.
Yeah, but we don't have to offer them, but there's a lot of ways to get to that reason. The big problem is getting a significant amount of fallen trees, big logs, and existing trees that are dead on the property, off the property. And that's what, he's gonna have to, regrade some of it because it's crazy in terms of topography.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I just like to protect the town.
Exactly.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Good luck. Thank you. Good luck.
So now we're up to the, and I don't know if we're gonna get time to do this before 7 o'clock, but I'll try and give
We
you.
have to start the public meeting at 7, or it has to be started at 7? It's different than public comments, okay.
Well, I'm not so
So-
sure about that. At 7 o'clock, you can say, this is the beginning of the public hearing. Anybody here for the public hearing can wait. Please wait for another
Okay.
20 minutes until we
let's-
do
yeah.
our business.
Because
I
I know
don't think
Terry
there's
wanna
a.
be here for this
a-
part.
do-
Okay.
As long as you say this is the public hearing, we're gonna hold it off for 20 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so the,
The second item is update on the Darling House tenant
so
lease.
as was stated, we've had numerous discussions, and I consider them some constructive discussions by both sides trying to work out a resolution. It appears that we can't work out a resolution. And I just want to give you a summary, because I know this is really first impression to everybody on the board as to what the relationship is with the Historical Society, the tenant, and the town.
Terry,
First-
before you begin, I know we're in a rush, but I did have an opening, just a quick
Go
sentence.
ahead.
I wanted to say, getting all these items, I wanted to apologize to the board. Everything came late yesterday and early, I know, and it's a lot of documents, so we tried to get it out. It was not optimal timing. And I just wanted to thank Jerry Shaw for putting it all together quick, fast, and in a hurry, and getting it out at about 10:15 this morning, which was unbelievable. And we are gonna have Jerry provide a brief overview, and, the agreement between the town and the Amity-Woodbridge Historical Society, as well as the chronology that brings us to this tonight, so
So there
off
were-
you go.
Well, the Historical Society's been trying to get this on the agenda for quite a while, so this didn't just, happen yesterday. But anyway,
Well,
be
it's been
that
a
as it
couple,
may.
it's been probably 6 weeks to 2
Yeah,
months, but
okay.
Yeah.
we've been talking about this for a long time.
We had meetings with both parties individually.
Right. I mean,
And
so
we
there
were trying to.
There was a chance to get it on the agenda, but that's.
No, it was not, I think the letter, you're talking about the letters that was sent, just came in the last day.
Right, I'm talking about
That's
the
what she's
letters,
talking about,
just
the
came,
problem.
right. Mhm.
So there is an agreement between the town and the Historical Society that runs through, I think, 2027, I'm not sure how long it goes. And it's been referred to by everyone, but a lot of people who spoke.
You have all that stuff
Yeah,
there if you
there's-
wanted to.
there's an amendment,
If
there's an
anybody
amendment.
wants anything. We've
It's
made
all here.
copies.
There's been some discussion and reference to a lease between the town and the Historical Society. I've read this document, which is in front of you, and it's recorded in volume 569, page 4 of the Woodbridge Land Records. I don't believe this is a lease. It's referred to as an agreement between the town of Woodbridge and the Amity Historical Society. In this agreement, the town clearly, it states in paragraph 1, by action of its Board of Selectmen, the town has renewed its appointment of the society as its agent for the custody, management, maintenance, preservation, and use of the Darling House, and that those are pertinent buildings and the surrounding land which are shown and set forth on a map. So if you go through the document, it really refers to the Historical Society as an agent, not a tenant, not a lessee. Paragraph 2 states the society's duties as agent for the town shall consist of the custody, maintenance, and utilization of the property. So I don't believe, in my opinion, now I know people can disagree, and I know Paul will probably say it's a lease, but lawyers can disagree on this agreement, but in my opinion, this is not a lease. It is merely an agreement between the town appointing the Historical Society as its agent for purposes of maintaining and operating the house.
Well, there's some purposes beyond that.
A lot of purposes. It's a long document.
just-
Yes, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Could you just help me understand though?
Sure.
Why that is so significant in terms of, I know we mentioned that it was a lease, or it was mentioned that it was a lease. Why is being an agreement any less of a concern or any more of a concern or?
It might be a concern because it was raised that there's a grant that's being applied for and they need a lease and the tenant's consent, or so there was a continued reference to the lease, that it may be a requirement of the grant that they have a lease with the town, but they don't have a lease. So that's number one.
The document in place right now, regardless of what we call it, what is it, what's the time frame on it?
It goes to 2027. 2027.
And based on what we heard earlier, the requirement is 10 years, correct? Is for their
Yes, right.
grant, okay.
Okay, so, but and I believe if this was shown to the state would say it is not a lease. That's my opinion, but that's, we can.
Do we know definitively that it has to be a lease?
I don't know. Well, that's a question we can talk about. That's really a peripheral issue.
Okay,
But you're
good enough.
right. The second document is a lease between the town of Woodbridge and the caretaker, who is Ethan Schneider, who you heard a few minutes ago. So the town, as the owner of the property, is the only entity that has the ability to lease the property, because Historical Society is not the owner, they're an agent. So the town entered into a lease with Mr. Schneider for a month-to-month, beginning December 1st, 2018, and it's continued to that date. Prior to that, we had a term lease, I think it was a year, one or two, a couple of leases that went for a year. But this is the document that is operative right now. It's dated December 11, 2018, and it is a month-to-month lease. It was brought to our attention that the society wanted to have the tenant remove himself from the property, and they wanted to rent the property from to a third party, to somebody else. There is a provision in the agreement between the town and the Historical Society that says the society shall recommend candidates to serve as caretakers of the property, subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen on an annual basis. So if there is a situation which has been done in the past and was done with Ethan, that the Historical Society came to the town and said, we want to give Ethan a lease, the town heard it and approved it. So far, there has been no new tenant provided to the town, and the issue now is whether Ethan should be asked to leave the property. It has been my opinion, and I think I said this to the Historical Society at a meeting we had here with representatives of the town and the society, that while it's true it is a month-to-month, and the town, if it wanted to, has the right to ask give 30 days notice and ask the tenant to leave. It is only the town that has that capability because the town is the landlord and owner of the property and not the historical society. To make matters a little more complicated, the tenant entered into a farm lease with the town, the 6-month farm or the 8-month farm leases that we traditionally give to farmers who are for $10 a year who want to farm certain publicly owned properties. Ethan was the successful bidder for a piece of property that is on the land that the Darling House is located on, and he's been farming that since the inception, I guess since March, put some money into it. And that lease does not expire until December 31st. We have given him a lease and the right to be there. In talking to Ethan, he expected, and it's obvious that he expected to be able to carry out that lease to the end of December while he was living at the Darling House as a tenant, as the caretaker. It was my opinion in talking to Tony, Beth, Sheila, when we were meeting with people, with the society about this, that it would be not in good faith if the town said, okay, we gave you a lease until the end of December to farm the property. We knew at the time you were going to be the tenant there, and we knew at the time it was your intent to continue to reside there. And now, sorry, we're not going to allow you to stay at the property. Again, it's the Board of Selectmen's decision, but it seemed to be not necessarily the best position for the town to take with regard to the tenant. And that's where we had the conflict. And obviously, there's a disagreement with the Historical Society. And I said over and over again that this is an issue that either the Board of Selectmen has to decide, or we have to have some vehicle, some means for everyone to come to a reasonable resolution to try and satisfy as many of the parties as we can. To make things a little more, not complicated, but there is a provision in the agreement with the Historical Society that says the town or the Historical Society, even though this document goes until 2027, either party has the right to terminate the document upon 6 months' notice to the other. So the town can give a written notice to his Historical Society saying, sorry, but this agreement is not in the best interest of the town, or for whatever reason, and we would like to renegotiate it, or we would like to set up a different procedure. That's why you heard someone say that there was a possibility that the town was interested in renegotiating. And there was comments today from the Historical Society saying that they thought we should modify the agreement to some extent. So both parties think that it should be modified. It's going to be very difficult for the Board of Selectmen tonight to make a decision on some very complicated issues, having you first just become aware of it tonight. And I think in order to move this along, I think Beth has a motion or something to present to you.
Put this out.
Put this out, you guys
discussion.
can discuss it, and I can
Right.
answer any more questions.
I would propose the following motion. Ethan Schneider's month-to-month tenant lease will continue through December 31st, 2019, and the first selectman will schedule a date in July for a meeting between the parties for the purpose of resolving the issues. If this meeting or meetings does not successfully resolve the issues associated with the town-owned historic Thomas Darling House, the Board of Selectmen will proceed to establish a possible new 1-year tenant lease agreement, and B, a new agreement between the Board of Selectmen and the Amity-Woodbridge Historical Society to replace the current agreement. Now, would it be an agreement or a lease? As is our right, as described in paragraph 8 of the agreement, highlighted for us, providing 6 months' notice of our intent to do so.
So there's two parts to that motion. The first part is to extend the tenant lease. I think that has to be acted upon as soon as you can.
Why don't we forget the compound motion and
Do one at a
do more
time.
than one?
I think maybe we should do the first part first.
I guess
Right.
it was, rather than, no, you're right.
Well,
Instead of a motion, as I started reading it, I said this is
First of
compounded.
all, Jerry just said we probably can't take action because we just got this.
I know.
So what do we need a motion?
I
But
think,
you can take action on the tenant lease.
Oh, we could take action on anything we
Right.
want.
We could.
But the fact is, we just did get all this stuff.
So by not taking any action, Joe, the lease stays in effect because the only one who can remove the tenant would be the Board of Selectmen. And therefore, he has a month-to-month lease, and that would continue on a month-to-month basis until the end
This
of
is
So
December.
make a motion-
very,
so-
very serious matter.
so
and
make the motion-
It saddens me that we're at this point. I have to tell you, we did
Well,
meet with
Right.
the parties separately, and we couldn't get a meeting together because we had it scheduled and I'm not sure what happened,
I'm
but.
sure no one's happy about it, but that's
No,
what we're here for.
but it's saddened. It
Yeah.
saddens me because I love
So
the
do
Darling
a
House.
motion, one
and-
motion for that.
Yeah, you can do that, Beth, why don't you do that?
We don't have to combine
Which
that
motion? I'm
with-
sorry, I was talking about how sad I
The
am.
motion to, you hereby move that the tenant be permitted to continue
The
on
month-to-month
the
tenant.
premises until December 31st, 2019.
What on the premises? Occupying the premises or
Occupy.
farming?
No, the farming is
He
separate.
has a farming lease
Farming is
already.
separate.
That,
Yeah.
he's there with that. This is to occupy the apartment that he.
And the lease is separate.
We're basically, the motion is to keep the current lease in effect through December 31st,
Right.
2019,
Month-to-month
right?
lease.
The month-to-month.
Caretaker.
The lease, right, the
Yes.
lease that he signed. The motion is to keep that in effect.
You
through
wanna make
the-
that motion?
No, you just
Oh,
did.
okay, I did.
Expired in October, didn't it? Or is it May? It's expired in May.
What?
No,
That lease expired and was changed to a month-to-month
Yeah,
lease. When was that?
It expired, the new lease is started in December, so it probably expired in October, November.
Okay.
so there's an existing lease that's signed.
Yes,
It's a month-to-month
Month-to-month lease.
tenancy.
yes.
So, to make it simple, we should just say he gets to stay there through well, pick a date, yeah. If there is no end term on it, every 30 days terminates.
Again,
things.
as I
Right.
said, the
So,
board, unless the Board of Selectmen moves to have him removed by legal process, summary process, he's there month to month.
right, so best motion has to put a date in, whatever date.
Do the date December
Yeah.
31st.
December 31st, 2019?
Yep,
Okay.
that's good. That's
Alright.
consistent with his farm lease. That's when the farm lease ends.
Maybe hopefully we can resolve some of this.
It's a separate question.
in the
No, but it's a
meantime.
logical date because it's consistent with the farm
So
lease.
does anybody second that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
So, I have a couple of questions. How is the tenant selected?
The Historical Society comes with a recommendation, and I think they advertise for people to be the prospective tenants.
Okay, so they vet the tenant, and they come to you, and they present the
Come to
tenant.
the board.
Come to the Board of
Come to the
Selectmen.
board,
Right.
present the tenant, and we basically agree with their judgment. We don't do a lot of investigation beyond what they do.
Correct.
Okay.
That's
So
what's
we're
happening.
taking their word that this tenant is worthwhile and a worthy tenant and will do whatever is supposed to be done. Okay. So now that they're coming back to us and say, we don't want this tenant there anymore because he's not fulfilling his obligation, but now we're saying, well, we don't want to take your opinion anymore because we want to, keep him there. So that's my first idea. The second idea is that the rent hasn't been paid, but it's been supposedly been put in escrow. Now, do you know anything about that escrow account? Were you involved with that, or another
No.
attorney involved with that?
No, Ethan has, I think, either opened up a separate account or has an account of his that he has set aside, I think, $3,000 for 3 months' rent. It's not a true escrow
It's
account.
not a true escrow
He's not
account.
paying
Right.
his
So
rent.
he's basically not paying his
Not
rent.
paying his
It's not a true escrow account.
Right.
Because a true escrow account has a third party as the escrow agent, and he knows that, and I think that he, no, you're right, it's not a
Okay,
true escrow.
so
He's
the board,
delinquent.
the board that has control of that property, or is given the agents of control of that property, selected him, and now is in the point of rejecting him, and he hasn't paid his rent. Now, who's paying the expenses on that property now? Who's paying the
I think
utilities?
he's paid it. I think he's
Does the
paid it.
town pay it, or does who pays it?
You pay it.
You pay it out of your treasury? Okay,
Yeah, our nonprofit.
okay.
Could we ask him to pay the rent?
We can ask
As
him as
part
a
of the
condition,
motion?
as a condition, if you want, to make
Well,
sure
I
he
would
pays.
hope.
Ask him to pay the rent, I'm sorry.
I mean, that would be the
I
very.
mean,
Put-
to
No,
me,
put
this-
it in the motion, demand that he put it in.
Jerry, if you were a landlord and you had property.
No, I'm not disagreeing, you don't have to
Okay.
say, I'm not
There's a couple of
disagreeing.
things that I'd say about that. First of all, in terms of the vetting of them. any
Please,
information
so
that-
we can hear each other.
Yeah.
Any
Please, thank
information
you.
that's provided, I would think, for us to
Yes.
consider would be, what would be included is documentation supporting whatever choice that people are making. I'm sure that's what was done before, I'm sure, and that's what's done even when we do candidates, et cetera. So I would expect that there would be documentation for us to consider whenever something like that is done. Similar to this situation, like you were saying, I kind of agree with Mr. DeCoster in the sense of there are two sides to the story. So from that perspective, I understand what you're getting at and saying that they don't want him there, but I also have received a document that refutes a lot of what they're indicating was wrong, and I don't know, to your point, Joe, in terms of haven't had time to really consider, talk to people or understanding all the particulars as to where it stands. So, as far as the rent situation is concerned, I see it as a show of good faith to put the rent aside, and I think at the very least, that the rent would be paid if we were to do anything. Either that or put it in escrow the way that it should be put in escrow if he feels that there is some sort of compelling reason that he should do that. But my sense is that it's not cut and dried as you're indicating. It's like I've got documentation that shows two different things. And I'd like to understand that significantly
Well,
better.
I read both documents and I came to a different conclusion.
Well, I don't know that we're here to have a trial over who's right or who's wrong, but what we are here to do is, I think, give some respect and credence to our agent, because that's what they are. If they think it's I mean, I don't think it's a lease either, but I think it's an agency agreement. And in the past, we've respected everything that they bring to us, and we've, in essence, made the provision that they're gonna oversee the Darling House and the property and the tenancies and everything else. They're coming to us, and there's a dispute between the landlord, or our agent, the landlord's agent, and the tenant. So I don't know why we're not taking at face value our agent's position that there's an issue with the tenancy and the tenancy needs to be terminated. All of a sudden, we're gonna wait to have a trial to determine who's right or who's wrong?
So that's up to the Board of Selectmen.
I know, I'm
All
just giving my
it's up to you.
opinion that-
And and I said it before, the only reason that I believe that there's some credence to the argument that he should stay to December 31st is that we did offer him and he did accept a farm lease. True, that is not a legal basis to
So at the
evict.
At the time, he should have said, then make my residence lease still the same time.
Well, he didn't know this, he didn't know this was all gonna happen, this is in February, these things were done. So, we did act in good faith by giving him the lease. I thought that it might not be such good faith in now saying you can't remain on the property, even though you intended to remain on the property and farm the property. That's up to the Board of Selectmen, that's my opinion. I think you should take a vote one way or another, and
Additionally, I do feel like the timing is a thing. It's, yeah, if there are differences that can't be reconciled.
Right,
what are you
there's
gonna do?
differences, so.
But in
you know,
terms of the, 30 days to move out in June of a planting year to a farmer who's there, it doesn't seem,
Well,
that's where it gets, in my mind, it seems like, okay, let's get this resolved within 3 months or 6 months, whatever.
He's welcome to keep the lease at the farm.
Well, actually, we are. I mean,
No.
in the documents I
No,
read,
we're
the
not.
farm was the
No.
farm was mentioned
It's not part of
significantly in
the
both
It's not part of
documents.
it's not part of the motion, it's
not
not
part of
part of the occupancy agreement of that caretaker cottage. It's just the land, and we have other people who have leases to land who don't live on that land.
Right,
Okay.
so, and as far as the 30 days go,
Yeah.
I mean, there is certainly a legitimate issue as to whether that notice to quit is proper.
it's nullity.
Well,
They're not the landlord. You know that, I know that.
I think so too, but if someone could call that a lease, then maybe not, but,
I don't think.
but even still.
No, we have the lease. They're saying they have a lease with us.
I know.
But they can, we
I
can evict.
suppose that still wouldn't even give them the right to serve the notice to
Right,
quit.
right.
But if we, depending upon how we decided, it doesn't have to be 30 days necessarily. And even if you serve him with a 30-day notice to quit, he gets a lawyer that's gonna be there for, we know that, so.
And if you drag it out to the winter, then you can't get rid of him until the spring.
So if we decided to vote to go with our agent and say, he's gonna be removed in some fashion, we could always take the next week or so and try to negotiate something with them. And if it breaks down, we serve a notice to quit. Another 2 weeks, I don't think is gonna kill him, but that's only if we decided to remove him.
You should take a vote. I mean, that's the way we should do it.
There's a motion on the floor.
Why don't you call it for
So
question?
what's the motion again?
to extend the lease till December 31st.
31st, 2019.
It changed from month to month, usually the month-to-month lease, to extend the lease to December 31st.
The month-to-month tenant
No.
lease will continue through December 31st,
December
2018,
31st.
and that's it?
Based on the rent portion. The rent has to be paid, and I'm assuming any provisions in the lease agreement, or whatever we're calling that, has to be met by the
Yes.
tenant.
Yes.
Okay. I'll accept that.
So when does he have to pay the money?
Give them
If-
15 days, 10 days. If-
Well,
if
it's
the
in an
motion passes.
it's in an escrow account, it should
If
be
the
tomorrow.
motion passes.
Yeah, right. Well,
If that's part,
a couple of days.
well, all right, well, not
I mean,
15, 2 or 3 days.
I think this vote should be on its merits. It shouldn't be on personal relationships with people involved. It shouldn't be on a relationship of third parties who submit letters and try to influence the board. You know, it should stand on its merits.
I don't know, I think we live in a community, and our responsibility is to the community, and the community includes everyone being heard. So from that perspective, I can't imagine that we wouldn't consider any input that we would get in the matter as it stands, because that's what we're here for.
If you say so, okay.
Thank you.
Take the vote.
Okay, I'm gonna call
Take a
the
vote,
vote,
you know
call
how
the
this thing
question. Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
All opposed?
There
Okay,
you go.
motion passes. I still would like to have try to set up a meeting, if the
Yes.
board will allow me to do so. Try to have a meeting with the two parties, and perhaps we can
There's-
come to
there's a
some,
I'm sorry, go on.
perhaps we can come to some resolution. We still haven't had that meeting between the two together in the same room.
I think that's
So
important.
if the board would allow me to do that, I'm willing to take it on
Please.
as
Yes,
soon as
don't-
possible.
you don't need a
There's a
motion for that.
second part of this that I just want to raise, and
Yep.
that's what's required to assure the Historical Society is put in the best position possible to secure the grant that they're looking for, as far as any agreement with the town or anything along
We've got
those
to talk
lines.
about that. First of all, pardon me? Oh, okay.
You what?
I don't understand that.
destroyed it with your vote.
How?
You destroyed it.
Destroyed the grant?
Destroyed the opportunity to write the grant by your vote.
You won't have time to do the grant in the next 2 weeks?
It's not that we don't have time.
Okay.
We cannot do it. You did not ask for our input. We were all sitting here. We could have refuted everything.
You
that
gotta.
was
You need to come up to
she
the
should be
microphone.
speaking, or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
well,
we were all sitting here, we could have provided the information for you. As I said in my 2 minutes, we have potential candidate tenants and would have presented a tenant lease with you with a candidate name on it had we been put on the agenda, but we were not afforded that. You did not ask us any of that information before you took your vote. We cannot function and have a museum there with Ethan as a tenant. So by your vote, you destroyed our opportunity to submit that grant. We can no longer do it.
I'm hoping we can just continue the dialogue just calmly, and what I'd like to know is, how were you able to operate it as a museum over the past 4 years that he's been part of as a tenant there? And why does this change it so dramatically that you can't secure a grant that's already been approved?
Because, as we had said in our letter, we have struggled for 4 years and wasted an inordinate amount of time trying to get him to do the things that he's supposed to do. We obviously, as you can see, have irreconcilable differences. We do not trust him to do what's in the best interest of the museum and our collections. We cannot stay there and operate a museum with him still there. We cannot focus on, and in good faith, write a grant for a property over which you have taken away control that we used to have. We cannot be forced to work with a caretaker that we do not trust. Our collections are in that museum. They are priceless, and we cannot work with him anymore. We tried to get on the agenda to discuss this in May and to discuss this now. We were not afforded that opportunity. We cannot, in good faith, write a grant. And with your question about whether we could write a grant or not before with this agreement, we wrote the 1772 foundation grants for the town that the town submitted and provided the lease agreement, and we got those funds. So at the time That was considered a lease by the town. The town submitted those grants with the 10-year lease, which was a requirement for those grants. So I'm concerned now, and again, it's a reason we can't write the grant, that the town does not seem to want to support us in that 10-year agreement to be able to make the decisions, as you said, as your agent, about what's best for the museum. We have expertise. We are passionate about history, about preservation, but we also have expertise, and that's our job, to provide that to you and to provide the recommendations so that that can be managed by the Historical Society as a museum, as a resource for the town. But you just took that authority away from us and took that ability away from us with your vote.
Can we come back to, can we open the public hearing and take one vote where we need 5 members of the Board of Selectmen, and I will explain before Terry goes. We need to make an amendment to the ordinance that the public hearing is about. And to make that amendment, there was something omitted in the legal notice that was written. We want to correct that, and to correct that according to the charter, you need 5 members of the Board of Selectmen to vote affirmatively to correct that technical error that was done. It'd take us 2 minutes. There should be
So I'll
totally
make a
not gonna do.
motion, we suspend
Right.
this motion that's on the table, and we're going to
Which motion? The
move-
motion was already approved.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, well,
To come back to the
it was a
discussion.
bad result, so I didn't like it.
To come back to the,
You're right, I'm sorry,
I
so,
think that this vote we just took was not in the best interest of the town.
right.
I'm prepared to walk out on your next agenda item if we don't
Okay.
revisit this.
Okay, we don't have to do it, then we can't have the public hearing and approve the ordinance. We just have to have another public hearing, publish another notice in the newspaper and spend X amount of dollars on it. That's okay.
Okay.
We can do that.
Is that
Okay.
what you want to do?
Well, actually, I'd like to see us take a vote on the ordinance and
Right.
take the time to do that since we have the people
But
here.
if he walks out, we can't make the amendment. If
I'm
you
making-
can't make the amendment, then you can't vote on the ordinance.
I'm making a point.
Okay, but that's fine. We have to do it again. We can do it again. So we'll do it again. It's about how much? $1,500. All right, we'll do it again. We'll do it next time.
well, let's not get
Are you gonna
way ahead
stay
of
or-
ourselves.
I can also
O-
stay.
Only
Okay.
Well, if
because,
you're gonna stay, we'll do
Well-
it. If not, we won't. That's all.
You have to let us know before we call the public
But
hearing.
see, what I resent is this party line vote, which was probably done yesterday and brought to this meeting,
No, David,
even
I
though,
didn't vote
even
for
though we
any
had
of
this
it.
discussion,
I didn't vote
even
for
though we
any
have
of
this
it.
discussion,
It
and the
was not.
facts are here, this is the way it gets voted
The
out.
facts are here, I read 2 letters.
Yes.
That's the input that I received to determine whether we should evict somebody from their place of residence in 30 days, or less at this point in time. I read 2 letters. Neither of them was so comprehensive in my mind that I could say unequivocally, I did not know a lot of the information that you're telling us now. I voted on what we saw and what we saw here. I did not vote yesterday or any other time. I voted based on what the input was that we had here today. That's what I did.
And I did not talk to Mika or Terry today, prior to this meeting. So,
And my reason for going in that direction has more to do with, again, as I say, somebody living there and saying in less than 30 days they need to be out. Particularly at a time where we know what they do for a living is tied to where they live.
That's how I feel.
we discussed we didn't have to make that motion. So, cause you brought that up before, Mika, and we said, it doesn't have to go that way.
I'm sorry, I have
The
to
30
leave
days.
because I have my.
Well, whatever,
I-
they're running the
I'm
meeting.
sorry.
If you don't wanna vote on the amendment, the change to the ordinance.
Let's vote on the amendment, I don't wanna cost the town $1,500.
All right,
Yeah.
so let's go. So then we have, real quickly, the published ordinance on the recycling left out the items that should be in the ordinance, and I'll give you each a quick copy of it. The column that says what's in was omitted from the ordinance, and it has to be included. Our charter says technical errors or omissions in the publication of a notice and before adoption of the ordinance can be corrected by the Board of Selectmen upon a vote, affirmative vote of 5 of the 6 members of the Board of Selectmen. And if Terry leaves, we don't have 5, and we can't do it. So if Terry stays and you all want to agree to doing it, we can take a vote and we can finish the public hearing and approve.
Dave said do it.
Dave said do it.
Dave said
Okay.
do it.
So you should take a vote.
Okay. We need a motion, or just somebody make a
I'll make
motion?
a motion that
Okay.
we approve the amendment as it's written in the document.
You approve the amendment to include the errors in omission in the published ordinance that went into the newspaper, and it will be, we will include everything that's in the column, what's in, that you have just been handed.
And strike 48510 list.
Right.
And
Sheila,
do we notify the town of these changes, or do we
The public.
expect them to like
Oh, you mean
be
after?
watching tonight?
we will, we have to republish the
Yeah,
ordinance,
okay.
and the correct one will be in there.
Perfect.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now I gotta call the public hearing to order.
Yes.
Is that correct?
I assume that's gonna pass.
Okay.
We don't need 5 for that.
All right. In accordance with section 4-5B, parens B, parens 1 of the Charter of the Town of Woodbridge, I now call this public hearing to order to receive comments regarding the proposed revision to sections 485-5 and 485-6 of the solid waste regulations. The legal notice was published in the Woodbridge Town News on Friday, May 31st, 2019. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice? Is there a second?
Okay, I found this on the web for is there a motion to waive the reading of the Little Motors? Check it out.
I'm not touching it, and it went crazy. Demons. Okay. Who seconded it? Thank you. All in favor? Waive the reading of the, okay. Mr. Genovese, will you describe the purpose of the proposed revisions to the solid waste regulations? Oh.
Sheila, you have some background on this also?
Yes, I do.
Sheila, probably begin
So
the
at the
discussion.
ordinance committee considered updating the entire ordinance to conform with state statute. Sorry. The ordinance committee considered changes throughout this ordinance so that we would come into compliance with state statute, including the items that we are going to recycle, which has just been replaced with the current what's in, what's out Connecticut recycling list. There's some copies there on the table. With that, the other major thing that this does is allow the Board of Selectmen to set the fee schedule, which is something you will take up separately from the ordinance. But those are the major changes to the ordinance, unless you have more, Tony?
No, those are them.
And that went through
Well
the
said.
ordinance committee to the Board of Selectmen and out to public hearing. So here we are now.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that have any comments regarding the proposed ordinance?
Thought you were gonna read it? No?
We waive the, we'll be here till tomorrow. Sheila just gave that, but we can do it again.
State regulations that our ordinance needs to reflect, and then there are changes that we're contemplating a fee schedule change, which will come secondarily to this, but the ordinance language changes so that the Board of Selectmen may, on an annual basis, set those fees.
Previously in the ordinance, the fee structure was actually specified in the ordinance itself. And what we opted to do is to replace that fee schedule with the clause that basically indicates the Board of Selectmen will establish a fee schedule. All that, and I think there was a change as relates to the same thing will hold true in terms of the hours of the transfer station. And beyond that, it was really an effort to make sure that the language within our ordinance met all of the requirements that the state put out for us to make sure we met. But generally speaking, in terms of the real heart of the matter, as far as the change to the ordinance, it was really allowing the Board of Selectmen to establish a fee schedule as opposed to having it in the ordinance and having to do a new ordinance every time you might want to have a change. So.
Mika's chairman of the ordinance committee, so that's why he knows all this. Okay, thank you. Have you received any written comments from anyone?
Yes, we have. We received a telephone call from Susan Israel, who spoke about the listing of what is supposed to be recyclable. And we also received a, from Ilia Alexiadis, the same matter.
Okay, thank you. And that was it? Okay. I just asked for public comment, yep. I asked if there were any public comments regarding, and we had some, thank you. Questions asked?
I think we're just confused as to when we are supposed to speak. We have concerns about.
Come on up to the microphone, please, and state your name and address, please. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Pat Jackson Allen, 20 Acorn Hill, so I am on the transfer station road. And I guess our concern, one is, how is the traffic gonna flow at the transfer station if you're weighing cars going in and weighing cars coming out? Already, there are many days of the week that it is exceedingly busy, so we're concerned a little bit about that. But I guess our personal concern is that we have 3 acres of land. We do a lot of gardening. We don't do demolition very often, if ever. But we do have a lot of leaves and trimmings and other things. And having the transfer station close to us has been wonderful. And part of my concern is that we pay a significant amount of taxes, and we have our own well, we schlep our own garbage, we have our own septic system, we've never had kids in school, never will. So the one thing that we have used on a 3-4 times a week basis has been the transfer station, because we enjoy the garden, we enjoy having our property look nice. So I'm concerned if suddenly we're going to be charged for every carload of prunings, that's going to be significant. And yet my understanding is my property taxes are based not just on the house and how many bedrooms it is, but also on the size of the lot. So in my thinking, okay, I'm already paying taxes to take care of the 3 acres, almost 3 acres that we have. So I guess we didn't know when to say this, but we're a little concerned about the actual how's it gonna work. But then also, you know, it's been sort of the one asset that we've had, and it has been very important to us, and so I would be concerned about losing that asset.
Sure.
It's a good and legitimate concern. I appreciate you bringing it up. As far as your timing is concerned, I think it's appropriate. The fee structure has not been established, so obviously it's important that we hear exactly this type of comment.
Yeah.
What I can tell you in terms of what's even been looked at is that the load, I believe the load equivalent, and I do the same thing. I don't have as much land, but I take brush there every year because the branches fall, et cetera. The difference, and I pay per load right now. I do pay something per load every time I bring, depending on what it is I bring. The estimate was that about 500 pounds is about the break even. So if you're bringing in a truckload and it's somewhere in the 500 pound rate or below, you shouldn't be paying more. If it's above, then there might be the difference, that type of thing there. So generally speaking, for most of the debris that I know, most folks that I see at the transfer station.
I mean, we have a car, we don't have a truck.
Then
we stuff the car.
We're not, so far.
And at this, I think at this meeting, we're primarily focused on what the fee schedule will be for the haulers. And
Okay. So that's different from us,
It's different
the
from you,
private residents.
right? The haulers that come in for, on a daily basis,
But Tony,
and
correct me-
demolition.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we weren't looking to change the fee structure for people who are bringing their garbage into it.
No.
We're just really,
Solid waste.
Just for
this
haulers.
intent is really because every town around us charges the haulers to bring in. We don't, so I expect there's more traffic coming to ours because of the fact that we don't.
Right.
And we had to come up with $25,000 this year because it's costing us more.
Yeah.
So we're
And-
trying to just basically extend that cost to
Okay.
those people who are really
And
using
I
it.
can appreciate that, and again, we don't use a collection service, we bring our own stuff. And I can see where that would be a reasonable thing to, because you have to figure out what to do with the collection of things that they bring. I was thinking more from the personal perspective of, how am I gonna get rid of my yard accumulated stuff? And that can, with 3 acres and the storms that we've had.
Right.
Now, the town has been great about the storms. I want to compliment the town on that.
Thank you, Lori.
Because it was a mess, and the town was really good about picking things up and gave us no grief about how much we were bringing after that. But, okay, that's my concern. As a private citizen, I want to be able to continue to bring my yard refuse and the garbage that we have. But I remember one time we took down a wooden fence, part of our wooden fence, and we were told, okay, we're gonna charge you for that. Fine. And that doesn't happen that often, and that's great. So thank you, that was my concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments, questions? Oh, okay. I now declare the public hearing closed. Thank you. And we're all set? Right, that's over? Yep, okay. Back to the agenda. How far did we get? Where were we? We have another public hearing. Here we go. Okay. No. We're in the middle of both public hearings.
Oh,
Right. I think we have to do, okay, we did the public hearing related to we didn't do it, well, neighborhood assistant.
The neighborhood assistance applications.
Okay.
And I gave you the motion that you I think I had that first.
I have a script for public hearing, that's all I have. Yep, and I've gotten through that. I'm in tab 8. Yep. Yep. Tab 8, okay. Good times. Public hearings, thank you. In accordance with, in accordance with section 12-632 of the Connecticut General Statutes, the R.E. Van Nordstrom Neighborhood Assistance Act, I now call this public hearing to order, to receive comments on the applications received for the 2019 Neighborhood Assistance Act. The legal notice was published in the Woodbridge Town News on Friday, May 31st, 2019. Is there a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you. Are there any comments from the public present regarding the applications from Amity Teen Center Incorporated, 10 Selden Street, lighting, HVAC renovations, siding, windows, and entryway at the front of the building in the amount of $24,950. Marrakesh Inc., 6 Lunar Drive renovation of Marrakesh in the amount of $120,000. Jewish Federation of Greater New Haven, 360 Amity Road Inclusion Program in the amount of $45,000. Sidewalk restoration, $60,000. Scholarships, daycare, camp, after-school care, $40,000. Now I ask for public comments on those? Okay. Is there any public comments on anything on those? Have you received any some correspondence, sorry? Okay, as of 4 o'clock today, thank you. I now declare this public hearing closed. I will then make the following motion. I move to accept the following applications for the 2018 Neighborhood Assistance Act and forward them to the Department of Revenue Services for processing. Amity Teen Center, $24,950. Marrakesh, $120,000. Jewish Federation of Greater New Haven, 360 Amity Road Inclusion Program, sidewalk restoration, $45,000, $60,000, and $40,000 for scholarships. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, thank you. Next case.
Next one.
Ordinance.
Okay, where are we? Okay. This ordinance now, okay, that's number 9. Yes, I did. So we did the public hearing for that, correct?
The ordinance we
Right.
approved, yeah, and they just never voted on it.
Okay. So now we're up to, I'm reconvening the selectmen's meeting regarding the public hearing on that. I'll ask for a motion to adopt the proposed revisions to the ordinance.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? You know what got me was that we had to have 5 people here, so I was all over the place. We're doing something out of turn, okay. The adopted,
I did.
okay,
David seconded.
yep. And the ordinance is adopted. The ordinance is effective July 12th, 2019, 30 days from date of adoption, correct? Okay.
When's the timeframe for the fee schedule?
That's
we know?
item 10 on the agenda.
Oh,
We haven't
sorry.
done it yet. Okay, now we're gonna go to number 10.
Okay.
Excuse
Yep.
me, I just want to remind you that we didn't take care of the police vehicle, I believe.
Right, we still have some
The two big
votes up here.
We didn't take care of what?
We have some votes up here.
Oh, do you wanna go back to that?
Administrative Officer,
All right.
Director of Finance.
Okay, let's go back to
Do that.
7D, request to waive bid purchase policy for police vehicle off-state contract and IT equipment of off-state contract, both of those.
Yeah, I got
Yeah,
and I
that's
have
E,
s-
that's
yeah.
E, I'm doing D now. Which is 7D.
This is for a funding, this is for the funding that currently exists for this. This is not a new vehicle. This is just a purchasing relating to that vehicle.
Okay,
Just
I
to
gotta
clear
get
that up.
there, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oof. So this is the police vehicle, and
Yep.
it's a state vehicle, as you said, in the amount, yep, in the amount of 33,059.
Right.
And the motion, you have a memo in your packet describing the vehicle. One new 2020 police department.
Oop, sorry.
Thank you. Vehicle price does include graphics, emergency lighting, and equipment installation. And this is a memo from Chief Capiello. And the total cost is listed for the estimate of 33,059 in your packet. I'll make a motion that we approve that. Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
So we're just waiving the bid process.
just the bid process.
All
It's
in
already
favor?
funded.
Correct.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. David, did you vote? Okay, sorry. Thank you.
I have the, before we proceed, I have the 2 IT-related ones. Again, this might seem like it's duplication, but this is the actual waiving of the bid process to use state contract to do the cabling and the, server replacement as we discussed earlier. Okay. Let me hand them both out at the same time, even though they're different projects.
Thanks.
Those are the same, those are 2 different ones, so just
Okay.
pass that down.
Pass them both down?
Yeah, keep passing. They're different, they're 2 different.
Got it. So you take 2.
Just
Send
pass them
those to
both
Joe.
down.
Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
look at them to understand it. I'm a little flummoxed here.
Anyone else need one?
You need one? Okay.
Joe, you need one or no? No, okay. Okay. So the first item is to use a, it's actually a GSA Schedule 70 General Services Administration. You can't hear me on this. GSA contract, it's General Services Administration that the state uses for Dell. It's better pricing for Dell, and that's the majority of it, but it's all off that contract, except for the engineering portion, which is a, for the vendor itself to actually install the equipment. That's 54,084.
Okay, just to get the discussion started, I'll make a motion that we approve the bid waiver to use TPNG to complete an upgrade to Town Hall computer services as described in the memo from Tony. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Well, this is all approved by Amity, right?
Correct.
I mean,
Yeah.
with
This
their
is-
experience,
The one
they've
you
probably
saw
used them before.
was not the first iteration of this project.
Right, okay.
We went back and forth many times before we got to a point where they were comfortable with it and we were comfortable with it.
Any discussion? All in favor? second one?
Second one is the cabling and the switches, which is off state contract 17 PSX 0217. That's for 43,762.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the bid waiver to use TPNG to complete an upgrade to wiring and switching, including replacement fiber optic data line from Town Hall to a new data room in the fire station. And
To clarify that,
details-
it's an existing data room that we're gonna now be sharing.
Right, okay.
It's not an actually new room.
Okay,
That's
okay,
right.
a new data.
When I
got
read
you.
that, I
Yeah,
said,
you're
wait a minute,
right.
it's not a new room, it's a
Okay.
data room that we are now gonna
Okay.
also use.
Thank you.
As opposed to in back of.
Yeah.
the-
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. All right, that takes care of D. Now E.
Warren, this is where you're up, sorry for the wait.
Item E is to award the bid for purchase of Public Works cab and chassis.
So, normally when we, issue this bid, it's pretty straightforward. However, this year, we have a situation where we received 4 bids, and the difference between the low bid and the, Peterbilt bid is about almost $18,000, and so there's some differences in the two. I thought Warren would be helpful for Warren to explain what those are and, what our recommendation is.
Right, over the years, we've had a variety of vehicles, and back in 2010, we decided to change what we were purchasing and the reasons behind it because of electrical problems and performance issues with the vehicles, and we started purchasing Peterbilt trucks. The 2 trucks that are being considered this year, basically the power plant and drivetrain are the same. The differences come in the design of the cab, the electrical system, and one thing that I did leave out of the memo is that there's, the Peterbilt has a zinc-plated chassis, which is meant to suppress corrosion. It's something new, so we have nothing to gauge the performance ability of that. But there is a distinct difference in the cost of the truck. The way the cab is designed, there's instead of having a two hinge system on the door, it's a piano hinge on the Peterbilt cab. So we found that since we've implemented the Peterbilts in our fleet, that there's consistency from the mechanic's perspective, performance issues that we've overcome, downtime. And so the mechanic and I jointly agree that the Peterbilt would be the better decision to make, but it's a financial thing, and so that's why we come to the board for input.
So Tony, do you agree with the financial analysis of Warren and
So I would.
this guy there?
Right, so when I was.
understand the concept.
Yeah, and when I was looking at it, I figured if the drivetrain and the power plant were essentially the same, that's the,
Correct.
guts of the thing. I didn't necessarily know if it was worth $18,000 to have all those other items,
Well, how often does the electrical?
So I,
In the past,
Time to time through
all of the
life
vehicles that we've had, and when we started buying Peterbilts, the difference is, most of the time, if it's an electrical failure of a junction point where the wiring harnesses plug into each other, and I came in here, one night years ago with a cigar box full of electrical connectors that equated to downtime for every vehicle. Every connector was a downtime of different variety of prolonged time, but to hunt that down and everything else, the difference in the Peterbilt is the wiring harness is labeled throughout the entire chassis. So if you're trying to troubleshoot a problem, you can isolate the section just by unplugging a harness somewhere along from the cab all the way to the end. And we have found that that's been a performance issue from not having a truck down for prolonged time or without sending it out to a dealer to trace what's going on.
So what would you think the lifespan of this, roughly? Of this?
Well, our trucks, the truck that is currently considered for being replacement is a 2000, and that's a Freightliner.
Okay, like
we-
20 years old.
Yeah, that's 22
So
years is the
Peterbilt's
typical
gonna be
life
20
cycle.
So over 20 years, you think you're gonna recapture this 18,000 or?
Well, and again, everything is relative to
I know
something.
you can't.
If I was to break it down over a 20-year cycle, let's say $1,000 a year, could it be recouped? I don't think any one of us in this room can have that kind of vision, whether we're gonna have
No,
that.
but you've been dealing with it for a while. Your vision's better than mine.
So you have 4 bids here. Do you have more than one Peterbilt bid?
No.
Just
We
one?
had a Mack truck, which was the high bid,
Okay. that's
and
100.
we had an International that was in the mid-range between what we're
Okay.
scrutinizing.
Is there another Peterbilt dealer you could get a competitive bid from?
No, unfortunately.
No, okay. So that's okay.
So your recommendation is that we purchase the Peterbilt for
From the mechanic's
$99,811.
perspective and my perspective, that would be the recommendation.
Okay.
But to justify the difference, again,
It's not a simple justification.
Right.
It's not an easy.
You're right.
So when you say a truck has downtime, how does that affect the town?
it depends on when it goes down. We've had one truck that it's all over the place, different times of the year, but if it goes down in a critical time when, we're plowing in the winter season and it has to go to a dealer and it sits there for a month at the dealer, that's critical. And we have currently 3 Peterbilts in our fleet. We have a 2015, we have a 2010, a 2015, and a 2016. And so they've been performing well, and we've found, at least by staying with that product line, that there's let's say, from the maintenance side of things, parts inventory, repairs, operation, there's things that's consistent to improve our performance, and that's why we stayed with that line. Now, we do have 3 Freightliners in our fleet, but one of those is being considered for replacement. We had problems with that, which was not the truck itself, but the body. We had to replace it on the truck, and let's say the way we operate is the old technology method, the way that truck is performing right now, as opposed to new technology. They're kind of unibody installations where product is distributed in front of the wheels, and the old technology was a drop-in sand or salt distributor, and it rear fed. And, that's what we had to go to because we had to replace the body. But, we still have those trucks in the fleet.
So Warren, you're saying in essence, from your perspective, you'd rather see the $18,000 spent on the truck for maintenance reasons, et cetera, as opposed to
Well-
using it for any other purpose from your perspective?
We know that from a construction standpoint, that the cab is gonna have more integrity. It's a tighter cab. It's built much, much better. Doors on trucks open and close every day. And we've had trucks where the hinge system has failed. And then you gotta start cutting the body apart, reinforce the door hinges. And I'm not saying that the Freightliner is a bad truck, but as far as, we got away from the Freightliner line and went with the Peterbilt for a reason. But the price configuration was, let's say, a little tighter back in previous purchases. And some of this disparity could be the zinc plating on the chassis. If I was to break it down, the other one is, the Freightliner has let's say, a thicker in height, the chassis, but it's only a polyurethane paint. The other one is zinc plated as a base, and then the paint goes over the top of it. So the technology is supposed to be an improvement against rust. And again, it's new. We haven't have that in our fleet, so I can't say that it's gonna be any better or any worse for us. But as far as the overall operation, from the driver's perspective and the mechanic's perspective, and the general build, there was a reason why we went with that product line, and through the analysis, we could live with the other truck, but the preference would be stay with the Peterbilt. When you're trying to build a fleet, you want consistency in the fleet.
Can you buy these on state contract?
The Freightliner's a state contract.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the trucks are on state contract. But the way they're packaged, we're sending the body and the plow and all the control mechanisms out as a separate bid.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we award the bid for purchase of Public Works cab and chassis to Peterbilt from Truck Center in North Haven in the amount of $99,811. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion regarding this? Upon Warren's recommendation. All in favor?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we? Item, what are we up to, 10? Okay. You have in your packet, two items, two pieces of paper. One, Tony, you should take this. You put them in here. Thank you.
So, this is our fee schedule for the transfer station, and actually Warren and Kelly are both here in case there's any questions that I don't know the answer to. You can certainly help us out. But as I understand it, Sheila, the main reason why we're doing this now is because in the ordinance, we have a 60-day notice in advance of a change. So the two fees that will most likely generate the most, move that over there, in revenue, particularly the one that will generate the most in revenue is the MSW, or the Municipal Solid Waste. And the idea here is to only charge a fee to the haulers that bring the waste into the transfer station, not to residents who use it and bring their own garbage. So that's a big point to clarify here. If you look at the towns around us, and there's a little chart here.
We had this a
Many,
year or so,
yeah, it was
right,
last time we met. Many towns actually do not accept solid waste or haulers
Right.
at their transfer station. And those that do charge a per ton fee to the hauler to dump their waste. For instance, in Orange, it's $98 a ton. In New Canaan, it's $85 a ton. Fairfield, $87 a ton. Weston is $87 a ton. We currently do not charge haulers to dump at our transfer station. We have a $100 per truck per year fee. So, so that's one issue that we currently have, is if you're gonna allow solid waste, municipal solid waste from haulers, we have to be able to charge if we want to remain equitable with the other towns around us. Otherwise, we're the only one that's not charging, and you could sort of figure out what may be happening. Second thing is, just as an aside, the scale that we'll use to weigh the trucks will also allow us to tell how much is leaving the transfer station, because we currently have no way of checking that what arrives in the Bridgeport at the burn plant is what is leaving the transfer station. So those are the sort of the two big benefits we
In
have
other
here.
words, somebody perhaps making another stop on the way.
I'm not sure if that's
picking
happening,
up more
but.
stuff. We're not
but
accusing, we
you-
don't know for
right,
sure,
but you can't, there's no way to tell.
Right.
So, Warren and his crew have been doing an excellent job of putting the scale in. It's pretty much done, correct, Warren? We just have like some paving and,
That's just the paving is the last step.
so.
Yeah, the scale has to be connected.
And, right, we have to, right, so to connect the scale. And so, we wanted to focus on the MSW and the bulky waste, which are the two that are, generate the most revenue and have the most tonnage. So I have a little chart here. And on the chart, it has the amount we pay for each. I included recycling just so you can see how much it costs us in recycling. But you'll see the tonnage for MSW for this year is projected to be 2740. So you can see how much the hauling costs. Hauling is done per trip. Disposal in Bridgeport is done per ton. So if you take the total cost, we pay roughly $80 a ton to deliver and dispose of the solid waste. That's our cost. Orange is, we got that information from Orange. I think their cost was $88 a ton, and they charge $98 a ton, if I'm remembering correctly. That sounds about right. Do you have that, Kelly? Yeah, here it is. They're at $90 a ton for their cost, and they charge $98 a ton. So they put an admin fee on to their fee. So our current fee, our current cost to break even on the tonnage there would be $80 a ton. That's a point of reference for you. Bulky waste, as you can see, is $113 a ton. And recycling is about $100 a ton. You'll notice the disposal fees in recycling have been going up steadily, but the tonnage is pretty stable. So that just illustrates the rise of the per ton fee from 0 to 35 to 55 to 65.
We can change this every year,
You
or
could,
whatever we want.
you
right?
could, do-
Per the
you
new
could change
ordinance.
this, right,
Yeah.
right. So now you can change it as opposed to having to change the ordinance.
60 days notice is what's in the ordinance.
Right. So, at
So
the
do
very
we have
least.
recommendations here?
Yeah, at the very least, you should be prepared to, I would recommend you at least set the MSW fee at $80 a ton, or I think we were discussing 80 or $85 a ton, or as high as $90 a ton,
Right.
but we didn't think going over that was, because if you look at some of the others, it was 85, 87.
They're all 85, 87.
80, you know, so.
Orange is 98.
Orange is $98 a ton,
So what do you think is a good number?
so.
I would pick 87 myself.
I'm
Okay.
good with 87.
87, right, okay.
88.
Well, I think they have to choose less than orange.
Well, they're 98.
Well, anything less
We're-
than 98.
So you want something above 87?
I'd like to make a little money for the town on it.
So if you, and we're thinking,
Your break even is 80?
so if just as a little calculation here, if you assume that, half the tons, and we really have no way to tell, but would you estimate half the tons come in from residents and half the tons come in from haulers, or would you say that's correct? At $87 a ton is 119,000, if I'm doing that right. 2739 divided by 2 times 87. Yep, 119,000 would be the,
So orange is, at least on this list, is the closest proximity.
Right.
Any other towns around that,
What do you mean closest to us?
Yeah.
a lot of them don't,
Any
like
other-
Bethany
A lot of
doesn't,
them don't.
a lot of them don't take solid
Bethany
waste, right?
doesn't, I see, but what about like Seymour?
What about
and
Seymour, do you know where?
Ansonia?
Okay.
I think what Kelly did on the research was looking at surrounding towns, plus the ones that are similar in size.
You gotta come up to the mic. They can't
Yeah,
hear
they
you on
can't.
TV land. Come on up.
Yeah, you can come up,
Sorry, thank you.
if you want to both, yeah.
Yep. You gotta share the mic.
That's where we determined it was by demographic, by the same size of the town, to try and do a comparison.
Which I understand, but wouldn't we really be talking about, are the haulers gonna come here or go somewhere else versus?
They're supposed to come to our transfer station. From,
Oh, if they pick it up here.
Correct.
What if they don't pick it up here?
Then they shouldn't be coming to our transfer station. But if, you're saying if the
What if
rate
the-
is lower, yeah. Good question.
I believe we have a flow control
We do,
ordinance that
yeah.
would prevent that. They're supposed to, that's regulation, they
Flow
have to
control.
come over. If it generates here, they're supposed to go to our scale. And no one
No
else.
one else is supposed to come.
Correct.
Right, that's how it's supposed to happen.
No one
But
else
if
is
I'm,
supposed to.
if I'm
Right.
understanding where you're getting at, if we're $10 less per ton, somebody might try to come to ours just simply because it's $10 less per ton.
Right now, it's infinitely.
If it's that,
Well-
if it's close, if it's close.
Right.
Right.
Right, no, I know, but it's,
$100, period. It's ridiculous. So, what would
Well,
you
orange
think?
is getting a margin of $10 a ton.
Yeah,
Right,
the admin
right.
fees, I guess.
I don't know what the other margins are, but
I don't know,
probably
we can look into
similar.
that, but if you want.
I'm just as good with 90.
Yeah, I don't, I mean.
And you could always review it, and if you think it's to be changed,
I
you
think
can always
it's
change it.
important to be competitive, and I
Right.
think we are.
Not, yeah, to the other point though, is there a methodology to determine where these haulers come from?
You do a
I
spot
mean,
check at the transfer
Spot check,
station.
you know,
Right.
okay.
periodic.
We've done that occasionally.
Other than that, there's no,
You can
per
tell.
truck, you can't tell.
One way you can tell is if people throw out their mail.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Indeed,
Because these
Right.
haulers haul in different, they go to different towns.
Right.
And
So you
Deep
got-
does come down periodically, and they'll stand on the platform and monitor a load. They separate it physically to find out if the waste
Okay.
is predominantly coming from
From Woodbridge.
Woodbridge.
Right, okay.
Chances are the haulers are just gonna take whatever they're charged and obviously raise the rates on the customers who they're collecting from. So that's.
Which is us.
Which is us, which is us,
So
exactly,
the,
so.
we looked into that a little bit.
What's that?
We looked into that actually a little, and in Orange, the resident rate is, do you know how much, it's roughly 30,
It's 35,
maybe?
I believe, and that they don't get the recycling, they have municipal recycling,
Right,
curbside.
it doesn't include recycling. So,
I know
they're similar.
when my
Our
trash,
rates are very similar.
Yeah. the
when
rates are
my
similar.
trash gets
Yeah.
picked up, I will get one of 4 company-named trucks picking up my trash at any time. So,
Well, they're supposed to be registered with the town. And, you know, they might have, it's under the same purview, but their company operation, the logo on the truck may be different.
yeah, well, I get BRS, I get Johns, I get Santee, and I get, Bizzuto. I mean, those 4 trucks show up, and I only.
They all send you bills?
No, I just get a bill, from
They're all the same.
BRS. That's what I'm saying, who knows where these
Yeah,
trucks come
it's
from?
all the same. I think they work for him, I guess. I don't know. That's interesting.
Maybe.
Okay. Any other questions for Kelly and Warren?
So, I think we were suggesting to set the,
I would anticipate that if there is an increase on the haulers to their respective customers, there would be an increase in terms of those people who would be starting to come to the transfer station.
Possibly.
So-
that's possible.
Yeah, but but based on the numbers, we're way ahead of the game, even if that should occur, and then we can take a year to figure out exactly how that's working out and see what we have to do to adjust.
Right.
Well, we've tracked vehicles up there since the transfer station was open, so you kind of get a sense, and it's a prerogative if the individual wants to go there on their own.
Right.
Some of them enjoy doing that, and if they choose to do that as opposed to having a fee base to have the convenience of the contractor do it, that's what happens. One of the haulers yelled out to us while we were working on the scale that any changes is just gonna get passed on to the customer. But right now, there's really a huge benefit for them because it's just an annual fee per truck. So there's nothing being regulated.
Right.
I don't know that they charge any more in Orange than they do in Woodbridge, and then they have to pay a tipping fee there.
Right, say, yeah, they do.
I can tell you based on what I know, it's not significantly different.
So at this point, we're just suggesting MSW and bulky waste, right?
So we're just trying to come up with a fee for the ton?
And I believe brush, large amounts of brush.
What's considered large amounts?
Well, our current operation is supposed to be a 2 cubic yard vehicle, which is essentially a pickup truck. But we have people that come in with sideboards on a pickup truck.
Trailers.
And trailers, and there's been discussions through size of trailers to regulate that so that, because they could come in with a 20-foot trailer, but most times people are coming in with an 8-foot or a 10-foot trailer on their vehicles. But they can heat that up, so they're charged by the cubic yard, but there's nothing to regulate the exact quantity of a cubic yard because of the way it's stacked. Now, we can compress it so much in the container because it's loose, but we might have more outgoing product, and we're not reaping the benefit. There's more frequent hauls on the brush, and so we're paying excessively to transport that. Basically any payable item is what we're trying to regulate.
So would we charge, if I come with my pickup and it's got, whatever it's got, 500 pounds?
If it's a normal load, there wouldn't be a fee, anything different than what you have now.
Okay.
But that fee would have to coincide kind of what we're doing with the cubic yard.
Okay.
But you decide to put rack body sides on your truck, and a tarp over the top of that, and you come in with an 8 or 10 foot high load, you're not 2
Saw me
cubic
that
yards
day, didn't you?
anymore.
I understand.
Do we have the ability to chip the brush? Do we chip up the brush?
Not at the transfer. Most people don't dispose chips at the transfer.
Right, but if you're hauling by volume, you can get a lot more,
Yes.
more brushing if you chip it up.
Yes.
Yeah. Would that be something
So
to
if,
consider?
we did accept chips at one time, but over the years, that's been diminished. We really don't have it.
I'm saying, when people bring their brush in, if
He's
you had,
talking about
If
when
they
we
chipped
used
it
to-
on their own and then wanted to dump the
no,
chip.
that's not what I'm saying.
No?
If you bring in brush,
Yes.
and you can't compress it down, you're paying for the volume. If you can chip it at the transfer station, then you're paying for the much less volume. It's cost effective to do that.
Well, we grind the brush anyways,
Okay.
and we create chips, and that might be a $10,000–$15,000 annual cost to us to process that out. We do in turn return chips back to residents for their use. It's recycling, but we have so much chip because we have storm damage, brush cutting that we do on the roads and everything else. It doesn't go by the cubic yard, but we're paying for that processing. So we accumulate that and we process more chips than what we know what to do with.
Okay. I'd
And
like to
to-
make a motion that we consider $90 per ton to be the
This
fee
is,
that,
for commercial collectors, the
For
fee of
commercial
$90
collectors.
per ton for
Right.
solid waste.
Right.
And then, we're leaving brush alone at this point, residential brush,
Right.
correct?
Right.
And then, do we have to talk about residential demolition?
The other thing we're gonna leave, yeah, go ahead.
You can make a motion, right?
Oh, you
You
got
wanna
it, that's
withdraw-
it? You just wanna do one?
Do one at a time.
Motion was
It's
made.
not
Let's do
been
it one at a time.
seconded, so if you wanna,
It's seconded, you seconded?
no, it has not been seconded.
Okay,
so if you wanna have a motion with
Yeah.
two,
what's your motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we begin to charge $90 per ton for municipal solid waste to the haulers.
Okay.
And that we continue to not charge our residents for their current brush loads, and that's it.
And when they bring in
I don't know about the demolition, so I don't,
Okay.
that's a whole different
Let's
discussion.
handle that one then. And this will go in effect 30 days from today, is that correct? 60, it says 30 up here, okay, sorry. 60
and I'll
days,
second that.
okay.
Right now, if I got this correct, that is, going to charge cost to a commercial hauler for municipal solid waste will be $90 a ton.
Correct.
There will be no fee for residential.
No, there would be no change to the current fee structure as relates to residential.
Oh, no change.
Residential brush,
To residential,
right,
period.
residential,
To any other fee.
okay.
What?
What do you guys, what do you,
Well, you need that in there if it's.
if there's no
Just
change,
take it
why
out.
do you need it in
Just
there?
put the.
Yeah, just leave it, Jerry, I'm sorry, just
Keep it-
strike the second part and just
simple.
leave it that we'd like to start the $90 for the commercial.
And that got seconded,
Who seconded that?
Joe seconded that, okay,
You're okay with it that way?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
all right. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now, there's a third thing on here, fee per pound for residential demolition. We're gonna handle
So
that?
you have to, that's the other thing we have to discuss is a residential demolition. Currently, we charge by the cubic yard, right, for demolition? So, the question is, do you want to change that to, per ton, which is how we dispose of it?
One of the things that we do take is we take furniture items, and that goes into our bulk waste container as well. So we're paying for disposal by the ton for that. Some towns have a disposal fee per furniture item. Let's say they come in with a big couch, armoires, anything that it's gonna be consuming volume in the container. They have just, it's not so much a weight base, but it's an item-based fee structure.
What's the pleasure of the board?
What's the recommendation from those that deal with this every day?
So, our recommendation initially was to consider the same per ton fee for the bulky waste, that we
For
discussed.
residents,
To
Yeah.
the,
Yeah,
to residents?
$90 a ton.
right, which is
2,000 pounds?
Is it to residents?
No, it's 2,000.
That's all because there's no way to tell, usually that's all who brings in bulky waste, right? I mean, there's,
Right now, we're charging per item for bulky waste, right?
per cubic yard.
Per cubic yard.
Yes.
So if you bring in a couch and you eyeball a couch, what are you gonna charge for that? $5, $10,
Might be
15 bucks?
75, 100 pounds. Like I said, most towns, they have a fee base per item, instead of weighing it, it's just a drop fee,
Yep.
you know, could be 10, 15, $20
Like
per
you do
item.
for white goods and.
White goods, we don't, we get, you know, right now, we get reimbursed, they go in our container, and we monitor that, cause right now we have no ability to weigh, and we're taking the contractor's disposal weight ticket for word that we're being compensated for that waste. So we'd wanna weigh that container when it leaves the facility, but we don't have, you know, we do get reimbursed. And all it does is basically, it reduces or eliminates the hauling fee.
What about provisions to have residents pick up items which are just unwanted but still very serviceable? I mean, I see a lot of good stuff going to those containers.
We were working with Furniture Co-op out of New Haven and trying to coordinate with them. That kind of fell to the wayside because it wasn't, we'd have to have a place to store the items. And if we had it, let's say once a year, twice a year, then the resident has to store those items in their home. So there's no convenient way to put them under roof, so like a couch, if it's usable, where do you store it where it's not gonna be damaged by the weather?
Well, I mean, there are two ways to do it. One is to, leave it there for 24 hours in good weather if somebody wants to pick it up. The other way would be to get involved in one of these organizations that recycles furniture for the needy. There's one in
And that's
Orange.
what Furniture Co-op did.
Right, and have them send a truck,
And any resident can call them, and I myself, my daughter wanted to dispose of furniture, and she called them, they were disinterested, they didn't want it.
I mean, the
I guess they
greenest
get
thing you can do
overwhelmed.
with waste is recycle it and have it used again.
So we were just recently approached by Goodwill Industries
Yep.
to come and do, and we thought because of the changes at the transfer station, maybe that's not the location, but if we had a couple of times per year had the Goodwill truck come, for example, to this parking lot and let residents know they can bring their items. So these kind of recycling opportunities, we've been talking, the Sustainability Committee and the Community Council have talked about hosting, in addition to the shredded truck. Mattress recycling can be brought in on a separate basis outside of the transfer station at a free service to residents.
So I don't mean to move this along, but what does this have to do with pricing?
I was just saying, I think I gotta haul this back in,
Yeah, I
pun
mean, we're talking
intended,
about
but
establishing a price.
we're talking
not-
about establishing a fee for
Not just-
It
residential.
works out to be about $4.50 per hundred
That's
pounds.
right.
Correct.
So do you wanna do it that way?
Well, if we keep it at the ton, the $90 a ton, it's, if somebody brings in a
We'll be there waiting for you.
200 pounds, it's $9.
Right.
So if it's 500 pounds, it's $22.
Okay.
So, and it is
If
currently
you're
charged.
disposing the item,
That's
you
the
have to
500.
be weighed.
Yes.
That's
the
the
only
500 pound
difference.
thing.
Yes.
So if you, actually, if you're bringing in 500, less than 500 pounds, you're actually gonna pay less. If you're bringing in more than 500 pounds,
Right.
you'll pay more.
Okay,
That's the sort of the,
cool.
Okay.
yeah.
So do you wanna make that second motion, Mika?
This is for, but what do we classify it as? What do we
It's
classify the type
residential
of material we're talking about?
demolition, or-
It's bulk
Right.
waste.
Bulk
Bulk-
waste and
bulk
bulk
waste.
Some people
Residential.
refer to it as demolition.
Okay,
Residential demolition bulk waste, how about that?
okay.
Seems to
make
be
that
more though
motion?
to me.
Did you make that motion?
Please, if I might, could I take a comment over here? No?
Quick, real quick.
Hand.
Yes, sir.
Are we talking about residential
Re-
bulk waste
Residential.
being weighed? Now you exponentially jam up the scale. My
Yeah,
concern
that's what I'm
is
thinking of too.
if we're coming in with our Honda with 200 pounds of bulk waste and other stuff and trash, and I've got to sort it out between what you take for free with what gets weighed, and I go back around to the scale. A cubic yard, by the way, gets us off the scale, and quite honestly, it gives the crew at the place a little discretion in terms of, yeah, it's close, don't worry about it, or yeah, Rick, we're gonna, we're gonna charge you.
Thank you.
And I do pay for it, and no
Yeah.
problem with that.
Right.
To that end, actually, Warren, do we feel like we're losing our shirts on this right now?
There's more demo that goes into the can from remodeling projects and things of that nature. A kitchen, a bathroom, remodel, that type of thing, as opposed to furniture. We're not losing our shirt on that end of it, but it does, in total weight, it does accumulate. I mean, somebody that comes up with a furniture item may have 2 bags of trash. It's
So if we
easy
were to
enough
say-
to isolate it.
If we were to say specifically construction material,
Wood waste.
Or demolition waste.
Oh, demolition.
demolition waste, as opposed to if somebody brings in a dresser or a couch or something, what we're doing now, we keep doing.
Well, it goes there, but it's not treated as demolition. That's the
Right,
difference.
but I'm saying we just do what we're doing now, as opposed to somebody who brings in shingles or sheetrock or something else, they get on the scale.
That's very obvious what it is.
Right, and they get on the scale.
Okay.
I don't, okay, come on, guys.
I don't wanna hurt residents.
Yeah, that's the way I feel, too.
I'm there,
No, I
you
agree.
know. So, how do we delineate?
Well,
Demolition?
I say, since
But
you have the
that's also
ability to
reason-
change your structures, let's monitor it and see how it goes.
That's right.
Okay,
I like that.
The learning curve.
I like that a lot. Okay. fair.
We'll just
So
leave
we'll
it for the
let that be.
haulers right now.
We'll let that be. We'll do the hauling.
So we do the whole, what about recycling? We doing anything with that or no? Okay.
I would.
Well,
That's,
they get weighed for that because they collect, the haulers are collecting that, so that gets
Right.
weighed as well.
Yeah, we'll
So
weigh it.
what's the price?
We'll weigh it, we weren't gonna charge it at this point, unless you wanna charge a fee for
You wanna
recycling.
do
Do other
that?
towns charge for recycling,
I don't believe so, because this is all new to everybody,
Okay.
so we're all
all right, so
trying to figure it out.
Also,
everybody
this is
okay
only
with,
waste, not recycling. That makes sense, okay.
this is just, solid waste is all we address this evening.
The haulers charge the customer for recycling in addition to the solid waste.
Yeah, they do.
Yep. Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I think we're good.
Good.
All right,
That's good.
thank you. Whew. Item 11 on the agenda. You have in your packet, which was sent out last week, a letter from the fire marshal. And basically, because we have shut down the fire alarm, sprinkler, and standpipe systems, is that correct? No, we
Correct.
haven't shut, yep.
Yep.
When the premises have been cleared of all combustible materials and debris, and in the opinion of the code official, the type of construction, well, I don't have to read this whole thing, cause it's late, but basically, we must clear out the building is the assent,
Correct. And,
of all the items.
this was in
And-
30 days of this letter?
Right, which was
June 21st.
originally June 21st. And today we received from, or yesterday, I guess, we received a letter from, Kelly received this, actually, a letter, I guess you sent him a letter asking
Correct.
for a
30-day extension.
30-day extension, which, Joe Capucci has agreed. So this would make the ending date of this July 20th, 2019. So, given that, I think we have to come up with a date for an auction to clear out the building.
Right.
Is that
Betsy-
correct?
Betsy's had some discussions on it, and I wanna
Okay,
ask her for
maybe
that.
you wanna speak to that a little bit more, Betsy?
Sure, so I've spoken with an auctioneer, and he and I are gonna be touring the building tomorrow morning so that he can take an inventory of what's in the building to have a better idea of how to market it and to whom he should be marketing it. And he's aware of our deadline, and after he's taken a look at the space, he'll be able to have a better idea of when he thinks he could hold the auction within our parameters.
Okay. So, do we have to make a motion to do this? Because we don't have a date or anything at this point. We don't know what we're selling and we don't have a date.
Could we make a motion to authorize Betsy to negotiate that with the
Yes.
appropriate parties
Yes,
prior
you
to
can
the
do.
dates,
Okay.
prior to the deadlines?
I can tell you that for the most part, what's inside the building is, there's some kitchen equipment, we're not sure what functions and what does not function. There's a lot of like office type furniture, there are pool deck chairs, I believe there's a piano, I'm not sure how what kind of quality the piano is in right now. There's lighting on the walls, ceiling fixtures, that type. It's a very wide variety of things on site.
One of the reasons we postponed this, and we talked about this yesterday, David, was that you might have had a couple of folks come forward to
So
do a
there-
catering business, and I have not heard from anybody. I
So
don't
there
know.
were three caterers that were
Uh-huh.
contacted. And they were all interested in establishing businesses in this area. But they were very reluctant to get involved in negotiations with the town because of the past history. So the only thing I could offer, if the town was really interested in wanting to act on this, they would reach out to these folks and have them come in and have a discussion. But in order for them to, actually put together a proposal would involve a lot of time and a lot of expense, and they don't want to do that if it's not going to go anywhere.
Okay, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody anytime, if they'd
Okay.
like to call. I just haven't heard from them since our last
Okay.
meeting, so.
But that's
Okay.
basically what happened. I mean, if it was in West Haven, they would jump on it. If it's
Okay.
Woodbridge, we don't want to deal with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, wish I had better
All right.
But as I said, if you're interested,
They can call,
reach out to them.
have them call us.
Have them call you.
Yes, yeah.
And you're reaching out to them. Okay, all right, I'll pass it on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the motion will be, what did you say, Mika? I'm sorry. The motion
The
on,
motion here is to set a date. We don't have a
Oh.
date.
we don't have a date, so
So we
you,
can't do that. And
so
I don't see a-
authorizing
I don't
Betsy?
see a reason to authorize Betsy to
Or the first
Okay.
selectman's
execute,
office.
or I mean, what
All
do we
right.
need a motion for?
But you have to have the auction by July 21st.
Right.
And you might.
That's what I was asking,
you
whether
can
I even
engage-
need a motion.
I don't know what the motion would be.
Well, can they engage the auctioneer to do the auction and set a date, or do they have to come back to the Board of Selectmen to set the date? That's the only question. Because you're not gonna have enough time for the if the deadline is July 21st, the auctioneer has to advertise, has to get things organized for the auction, and
We
to come
can't do
back.
this at the July meeting, is what you're saying.
It won't be enough time.
Yeah.
He needs to know now that there's gonna be an
So the
outside.
motion would be to authorize
An auction.
Beth to
Yeah.
establish an auction and a date
Yes,
that complies with this timeframe.
yes.
With a 30-day extension.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on that? All in favor? David, you good? Okay, thank you. Okay, item 13, Assistant Administrative Officer's Report. Betsy.
I will be brief. I'm going to pass out a draft brochure. This is what both Beth and Mika were referring to earlier. I've been working closely with Rex Development, that's our regional development organization, and the Council of Governments to create a map to promote the town's retail, restaurants, recreational businesses, and our trails and farm stands. And this is the most recent iteration of the draft. I've been in touch with nearly, I think, everyone except one organization on this list to make sure that they're listed accurately. And Rex will be printing these for us. I just found out, somewhat disappointingly, they'll only be printing 150 copies, so that's not gonna go very far. But they've done all the work of the design, and they'll do that first print run, and after that, it'll be up to the town to manage the listing as businesses come and go, and as trails change or not, and to do any further printing. But I'm very excited about this project, and I think it's gonna be very helpful. We have a lot of specialty retail stores in town that attract certain clients looking for something very specific, and I think a lot of those clients aren't aware of the other things in town that we have to offer, and I'm hoping that this will help.
So this is reflective of what it'll actually look like, Betsy, at this point?
Yeah, there's
There's-
just like a few typographical errors on here as
Like
from
the
what I've
trail
heard
color
so
or
far.
anything like that?
I'm sorry?
They couldn't do the trail colors?
I'm planning on submitting all of my comments to them on Friday. So I am going to be asking them to either change the color of the trails or make them bolder, or do something to help it stand out.
And Mika suggested yesterday at the Palestinian Museum that they go orange, so people can, you can't tell what's a road and everything's green here.
It's hard to
And I
tell.
think that was a good suggestion, so.
And this will also be available on the town's website. And that'll be in early July. And the other thing I wanted to let you all know is, speaking of trails, I reported to you several months ago about a survey on the town website regarding trails and trail usage. Excuse me. And I'm now in the next phase of that project. I'm working closely with the Parks Association, the Land Trust, and the Conservation Commission Chair to come up with a trails plan that all the organizations that manage trails in town agree with. And we're discussing standardizing signage, if and where to place benches or other amenities at trails, and also coordinating trail blazes. What we've found through the survey and discussing this is that although the trail might continue from one landowner to the next, the user shouldn't know all of a sudden a blaze has changed or signage is different. It should just be one continuous experience for the user. So that's the goal of this plan, is to make the trails a better experience for people. And lastly, I wanted to make you all aware the Community Council is working on creating a townwide picnic to coincide with the first summer movie organized by the library, and that's on Tuesday, August 6th. It's National Night Out, which is a nationwide event designed to make community ties stronger, which really aligns with what the Community Council is working on. And the format will be, people will be invited to bring their own picnic dinner, and if possible, or if they so desire, to bring a side dish or a snack to share. There'll be more details to come, but that's the basic outline of the event. It'll precede the first movie on the green. And there's a poll on the Woodbridge Town Library's Facebook page and website asking the public what sort of movies they would like to be shown on the green this summer. And that's it.
Thanks, Betsy.
Okay, item next is Communication Director Grant Writers Report. Sheila.
I'm going to very briefly update you on a couple of items. I'm passing out, there was a resident who reported a concern regarding pedestrian safety on Lower Litchfield Turnpike while the DOT is conducting their project there. I reached out to find out what is happening with the crosswalk for Merritt Avenue. And as you can see from the map, you see all the way to the bottom, added crosswalk with pedestrian push button. Upon request from Town Hall, they have added a painted crosswalk. And I also received an update on the timeline, because there is some confusion as to when is that project set to conclude. And I was told that the paving is meant to happen sometime in August, and that after the paving is complete in that section, the crosswalk will be painted and the working walk button lights will be back in place, and then there will be signs up to tell people there's a crosswalk there. So those are improvements to pedestrian safety down there, and we thank the resident for bringing it to our attention. In addition, a couple other quick updates for you. In your packet, you see the draft of the summer concerts on the green flyer. And in addition to that flyer, we've also put out about the transfer station changes. Now, obviously tonight you've made some decisions about the changes and what's happening. So the public information plan, the next step of that is we're gonna update this flyer with the information. We're gonna synthesize what was done here and make sure that people understand it before it takes place. And the flyer will be updated, and importantly, we're gonna have the opportunity to print these out and get them into the tax bills that are being mailed out. So every household will receive a back-to-back flyer with this information. In addition, the website will be updated where the fee schedule it was current as to a few minutes ago when you guys changed it, so we're gonna make an update to the website. There's also a brochure there, like a trifold brochure, that will need to be completely updated with the new information about what is recyclable, what is not, based on what's in, what's out. So all those things are going to happen moving forward, because we wanna make sure the public is completely understanding what is happening with the transfer station, based on your action tonight. That's my update.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to
No,
adjourn.
not yet. I'm gonna, as I had said, I'm gonna reach out to members of the Amity-Woodbridge Historical Society and also Ethan and see if we can try to have a meeting. And that's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you.